So let's call the May 27th school committee meeting to order at 6:02 p.m. Excuse me. So first thing up on the agenda is citizens' comments. We have a small crew tonight, so.
Patrick Waddell has raised his hand, so let me move him over. This is so hard to find them. Okay. Patrick Waddell. He's at the top because he raised his hand. Okay.
Let's discuss this.
Patrick, you should be able to talk.
All right, you guys hear me?
Yep.
Excellent.
I haven't started the timer. Just to remind you, there's a 3-minute limit.
This will be quick. This will
Go
be
ahead.
quick. So recently I had a conversation with some Wyndham selectmen, or one selectman anyway, and he says that he's waiting. The reason that a town meeting has not been scheduled is that he doesn't have a budget from the schools, and he doesn't have an approved, a FinCom approved budget from the town, and that said that not really going to schedule a meeting until those things happen. Are we going to have a budget after this meeting, or sometime soon, or is there already a budget there that can be acted upon?
Thanks, Patrick. We'll get to that a little bit later,
Right.
because I do plan on addressing that.
Is that it?
That's all I got.
Okay, you're going back to the participant room.
All right. Give it another quick second. All right, I feel comfortable moving on now. Excuse me. So next up, we're actually here to discuss the memo of understanding with the Hamilton Turf Committee. I know we had a few questions last week as this process actually began in happier times. So let's put it that way. And just sort of you guys in your course of doing your due diligence, when we finally came up for the reading last week, that some of the financial asks and didn't seem to make as much sense timeline wise. So Peter, I see Phil here. Is Phil and Bill Melville, you guys all here to talk about that?
Sure.
So like I said, just sort of as the elevator recap, we just sort of felt that in looking at it, raising 1.5 million, and with the time frame given of what was it, a year and a half or so, that we're still going to be feeling the effects of this, and I imagine we're going to be in a pretty tight budget crunch. And while we are very looking forward to really embarking on this project, I know that me personally, and I don't want to speak for anyone else, sort of worried that just because this pandemic couldn't be foreseen when you guys were sort of doing the meat and potatoes of the MOU, that timeline doesn't make as much sense for us. And so we were sort of worried about that and decided that the best way to go about this was to bring everybody to the table and actually have a more robust conversation.
So David, was this your question then? Because this is not the same question as what Michelle had. So Michelle had questions, and it was in regards to how much was going to be fundraised, and to include the both town CPCs and the patent. So that was
Right.
So what you're saying is something different. So I just want to make sure we have.
It is, but there was something that both came up last week, and and I do actually think they're in ways interrelated. But I guess in that regard, yes, it would be my question, but it is something that both came up
That's
last week.
David. Let me throw out my understanding of the agreement, and there is no time frame. The agreement doesn't call for a time frame where this project needs to come before the community within 6 months, 18 months, 36 months. There is no time frame to bring this project forward.
So, all right. I mean, that's good. I'm going to try and now pull up the MOU to sort of see where the wording.
There are a number of timeframes to define what the project is, so that we can begin fundraising. But there's no this needs to be started by January of 2024, or we're taking our money and going home, or something like that.
Right. No, I mean, and I understand that, sort of time is of the essence also, because there's, when this sort of first came up in front of the committee, a few years ago, back when Josh was chair, and, we had voted to move it to a debt exclusion. I just sort of remember just, sort of wanting to strike while the iron is hot. And so I understand that it's sort of a hurry up and wait right now, because it's like, okay, well, now that we're sort of getting this MOU ironed out, we definitely want to be moving forward with the fundraising and getting sort of the community involvement of, sort of going. But at the same time, the timing couldn't be worse. So I want to make sure that we're treading carefully, so we don't sort of kill this in the water before we even get a chance to really give it a good go.
So I think just in terms of, I don't know how long it's going to take to put this pandemic behind us, but if we were to start tomorrow, if you funded the Gale study tomorrow, they've got to go off and do that study. I'm not sure what, let's assume that takes 90 days. I actually don't know what their time frame is. And then there's 120 days for the school committee to determine what the actual project will consist of. So you're looking at the better part of 8 to 10 months just before before this calls for the actual definition of a project. Not that we want it to take that long, but that's the kind of flexibility that's in here.
So I can appreciate that. So all right, I guess I'm comfortable. Michelle, did you sort of want to speak a little bit more in depth to what your concern was? Which, again, was sort of my concern too. So.
Well, doesn't sound like it, but.
Oh, no. I'm saying, what I'm saying is I agreed with you on.
My concern is that we've had 2 groups approach us in the past to fundraise for playgrounds, and they raised a significant portion of the cost. They raised well over $100,000 to $125,000, not including CPC money, for projects that were less than $200,000. So they were raising like 75% of the cost. You're proposing raising barely 20% of what is the projected cost. And I just don't see that the community is ever going to be in a position to support paying the rest of that cost in the same way they were not willing to pay for those playgrounds. So I think if we're going to do this in a partnership, that, the private fundraising has to be like 75% of the budget of the cost of the project.
We never talked 75%, Michelle. That's kind of an outrageous ask.
We have never talked about a number ever.
But 75% is a lot of an ask.
I agree, it is. But to raise less than $1 million out of private fundraising is just not. It's not the way we can go to our community and say that there's support. We cannot ask the community. I mean, if we were rebuilding the school and we were going to include this as part of a project or something like that, and you were looking at MSBA money and I could see that, but to go forward now and say, we're going to authorize this group to start raising $1 million, and we're coming to you in like 2 to 3 years and asking you for $4 million or $5 million because the cost is going to go up. It's just not, there isn't enough skin in the game for the committee to start this project, in my opinion.
That's your opinion, yes. But I have to say, one thing about it is, you know, those playgrounds were because Jeff and Mike didn't want them. That's what happened with that.
Can I jump in here? So this has been big. This project has been kicked around for 11, 12 years, maybe. This private group came forward 11 years ago, allocated money from the Patton estate to the fields. There was some
That was
debate.
like 4 years ago.
Was it 4? Okay.
Like 4 years ago when they built Patton Ridge. Yeah.
The 11 years, I think, is how long this conversation's been going on about turf fields. And the turf fields were originally envisioned for, or additional playing fields were originally envisioned for the Patton property. And then for a variety of reasons, that proved not to be a possibility, which is why the, you know, people like Phil were able to redirect some of that money towards a future turf field.
So
if I may, Michelle, to answer your question or to address your statement directly, the scope of the project has not been defined. That's a very important factor to remember. The genesis of this project was to alleviate the field congestion at the parks in both towns, to reintroduce passive recreation into those parks and playgrounds, and to move athletic, active sporting to a centralized, safe location. The beneficiary of that happens to be the school. It gets to return the majority of its sports and its players and athletes and students back to its campus. And so with that, it was devised from Gale what we would need, we being Hamilton Wyndham through the rec department, what we would need to do to maintain the parks and fields in their current condition and restore them before they further deteriorated to a point of unusable at all. So this isn't about getting a turf project just for the school. This is more of a community project where the genesis lies in the towns to relocate some of the more active sporting events. And this was all pre-flag football. So the original Gale study done 7 years ago, 8 years ago, and I have all of the material and I've read it all because I've attended it all with Peter. I can tell you that the wherewithal in all of this was that we needed to have ideally 2 turf fields that would accommodate multiple sport uses to alleviate the congestion and the further degradation of the town-owned fields and parks. So from that, Gale then said the ideal location, which again, we secured, we being Peter, myself, Sean Timmons, CPC monies to fund the studies by Gale of the ideal location. Fast forward again, more CPC monies were used as well as rec funds to basically get the 2 turf fields and track approved by the town of Hamilton for the 2 turf fields and the track to be rebuilt. So that's already been approved. So those numbers, as they stood 3 years ago, was somewhere south of $6 million all in. All in. That's lights, track, game field, backfield, which is a 3-sport, multi-sport field. It didn't include all of the amenities that were later devised and designed by the school to see what could we do with this property. That was something that was taken by the previous administration with Gale's help. And that's where a project then blossomed to, this is what you could do with your entire property as it relates to athletic field improvement. So to Peter's point, there is no set timeline. There is no set scope defined. So for us to put some sort of number into the memo of understanding was more along the lines of, if we raise X amount of dollars by the end of 2 years, we want to have commitment from the school committee that they will continue to proceed with this project, regardless of what the scope may be. It could be scaled down. If we raise 1.5 million, say $2 million, we're not going to stop at 1.5. We're not going to throw up our hands and say we're done. We're far from that. I have no dog in the race on this. My children are graduated; they're in college, so I have no bet here. I'm just saying that for us to move forward, we're saying if we raise $1.5 million, we don't want to come to you and say, let's define the scope based upon the money we have. And if we find out that the scope of the project is 3.7 million, we would like to have the school committee say, okay, we will request a bonding for the difference, or we will request X amount of dollars from the town. That's what that paragraph is about. It's not saying that's our finish line. Now, given the current situation of the pandemic, all of the charities are in a very tight situation. The marathon's not being run this year. A lot of charities are now set back. We can't expect to parachute into a donor's wish list of giving money and say, hey, we're here, we want to do a turf field. They're not going to place us ahead of their previous commitments, whether it be cancer, whether it be whatever the charity is. So this is a long range vision, but we just want to make sure that as we embark on this and we raise significant money, and it's not going to be done through bricks and cupcakes, it's going to be done through education and social outreach and community outreach and engaging professionals to let us know what our abilities are within our geographic center of influence to raise money from. And if we have to go outside of those bounds, we'll know when we hire an expert to tell us that. We are then going to be left with, okay, this is how much we can raise. If we can only raise 1.5 million or 2 million or 3 million, we don't want to come to you and then say, and have you guys say, oh, you know what, it's not good. Return all the money. We're not going to go ahead with it. So we really want to make sure that we are joined at the hip on this project and going forward.
So would you be comfortable in putting in that you would raise 75% privately?
We don't know what the scope of the project is. So how can you say 75%?
And Michelle, I think you're comparing when you try to compare $100,000 or $200,000 playground project to $5 to $10 million, investment. You're talking totally different animals.
Yeah. But we also need to build a new school. And if I'm going to go to the town and I'm going to ask them for $4 or $5 or $25 million, I'm going to build a school. I'm not going to build a turf field. Well,
I think if you built a school, probably part of that school would be athletic facilities, and the turf field would be part of it.
Only if it was at the high school level, and that's not what we have our SOI in for right now. Right now, our focus has been on elementary. I hear you. My son can't play on the track either. Like it, but it's.
I think one way to look at this, Michelle, and I certainly take your point very well. I think if you were to turn to the community after we do all of our outreach and education and the whys and so forth, they're going to realize that we're going to get a multi-million-dollar asset facility for basically a percentage of what the total cost would be. So, and we don't have to, again, I'm going to point you back to the genesis of all this, which is to preserve your town parks and playgrounds. The best thing that this community can do is invest in synthetic turf fields, approximately 2. Again, this was pre-flag football, so that may change, but let's say 2 turf fields would satisfy and preserve our fields in the parks. Then we can define the scope down the road once Gale does its newest study and say, okay, if it's going to cost $5.5 million, we're going to go all the way to the wall and try to raise as much as we can with Joanne Patton's, anchor corner foundation and build upon that. And if we can raise 2.5, 3, great. We just saying, come 2 years, if this is all we've got to show for it, we don't want the plan to be abandoned. We don't want, we still want to be able to go in front of the town and say, this is what we've done. The cost of the project has been winnowed down to say 4 million. We've raised 1.5. Would you bond 2.5 million to finish this project? So in my mind, if I was in that audience, I would say, oh, 2.5 million to get a $4 million facility. That sounds like a good deal. I would do that, spread out over 30 years.
Yeah, but I think like what Michelle is saying makes some sense that, given the pandemic and competing fiscal needs, I don't know that a sports field is a priority right now.
But it's not right now.
I think all we're asking is that when the time comes, you let the voters decide that. I don't think this doesn't commit you to do anything more than that, other than, take it. At the end of the day, it's going to require a vote.
But oftentimes, just as it's being conflated right now, in order to get our budget approved and get our debt exclusion, people are conflating those two things together at that same time. When we're going in to get our operating budget approved, asking for whatever $1 million it's going to be for that turf field is going to get conflated. It's going to make that.
But we're not.
Listen, I've totally said I have no problem committing here, but I need more than $1 million. Like, it's just not enough money.
So, Michelle, first of all, we committed to $1.5 million. We're going way out on a limb doing that. We don't know. We haven't been able to do a study. We haven't done a fundraising study. We will be sharing our fundraising strategy with you, which will include what we've learned about our ability to raise funds in the community. If we find out that we can raise, 15 million, we'll let you know that. And, great, that'll become our target. But we don't have a time frame. We don't know whether we're trying to do this in a year or 5 years. We don't know what the scope of the project is. And, we're in the middle of a pandemic. So I don't want to set us up for failure by, committing to a bigger number just to commit to a bigger number. It doesn't make sense. It potentially sets the whole thing up for failure.
Yeah, but you're not actually raising 1.5 million because half of that has already been collected and is sitting in an account. So $1 million new dollars. That's
Michelle,
it.
with all due respect, Peter and I spoke in front of Hamilton Town Hall meeting, and we persuaded a near unanimous vote for those funds to go towards recreational fields, which was Joanne Patton's original intention with me when I dealt with her over 10 years ago. So we have fundraised that money.
Michelle, I understand what you're saying, but I think you also have to look at the fact that this is a partnership. These are invested members of our community who have shown over the last 12 years that they are in this for the long haul. And like they said, so I know budgetary, yeah.
I'm not going to be, there's no way I'm going to be able to commit a future school committee to putting forward a bond when they're only fundraising $1 million.
But we don't know. We don't know that.
The request.
I think you should also look at, you are going to need to make upgrades to your athletic facilities with or without us.
Sure.
In that we have a private partner that's willing to help us in this cause. Craig and Julie and other administrators have told us the cost to our horrible fields, and that's only going to escalate as this continues.
Right. I think that
I was gonna say, if not us, I mean, someone's gonna take this stand now and step forward, because we've been neither here nor there for many years now, a decade.
And our fields are so bad right now that all our fields are off campus practically because they're not playable at the high school. And we're paying especially for the tennis to be all the way out on Route 1. And we paid so much in busing, almost $15,000. So if we keep accumulating that $15,000, that's a lot of money outsourced just for busing. I mean, tennis alone at $15,000, $13,000, that's a lot of money, plus whatever fees. Our not to be able to play on our campus is just really sad.
Well,
we need
the
to
tennis
work
courts
together.
is not our fault. That tennis courts is not our fault. The tennis courts is because the town isn't repairing the tennis courts. It's not.
Well, it is a little bit on our fault too. We didn't try to make an agreement to work on that.
Excuse me. Well, I mean, so just to sort of pull this all back in, one, before I forget, Peter and Phil, do you mind just sort of spelling your last names for our secretary to be able to get on record? She just texted me and asked me for that.
Sure. Tocci, T as in Tom, OCCI.
So
Gordo is Gourdeau.
thank you, guys. So, I just sort of want to pull this back because I think it's important that we just sort of have this discussion just so as a group collectively, we all know where we stand on sort of, what our trepidations are as a board and, where, sort of where you guys are coming from. We definitely appreciate all the work that you guys have done and continue to want to do. Or sort of those at home, coming in that aren't aware, right? They're like, oh, why are we talking about fields right now? That, for being such a green community that our fields really can't support the amount of use we get here. And, an old study showed, the best place to put these turf fields to try and ease up on the usage and give us some better facilities here in Hamilton Wenham, went to the high school, which should be at the high school. So, it sort of looks like it's a school project, but it's really something that benefits the entire community. Excuse me. In our capital ask that we're coming up with this year, that we're going to present to the towns at the upcoming town meeting, is really, just to sort of go back and just seeing as it's been a few years and now our community has different needs. Our tennis program is being shipped, has to be played elsewhere. And, we keep running into more and more problems with our fields, and even sort of things that might have been overlooked, making sure that we're really compliant with Title IX, and just sort of making sure that everything is treated equitably throughout our district, that we want to make sure that we're sort of touching all those bases, especially now that, we're getting a lot more serious about what our fundraising is looking like and, creating this MOU. And, so I just want to sort of bring that up again to the community, just to sort of give everyone a quick recap of where we are and why we are here. We don't know what the cost is going to be, right? Because we're sort of, this project has changed shape over the course of the past decade or so, and it will continue to sort of change shape. I think that I know personally, I feel a lot better after having this conversation, just sort of making sure that we're not sort of cutting off our own feet, as far as time-wise goes, and making sure that, like, once we sort of get a better picture of, my thought was always that as the Gale study goes now, it's a 3-phase project. I really never see, I couldn't see us going, past phase 1. I couldn't keep going back to the town asking for more money, especially knowing that we have a school's needs. Maybe, hopefully, down the line, maybe that does include a softball field and a field hockey field at the elementary level. So, we're sort of touching those needs. But who knows? We still have to get through that whole process as well. But if we look at whatever this new version of the study brings, we'll all get a better understanding, as well as better understanding of what this project will look like, and which will help give us a better number to sort of shape or target for the fundraising. I know from our perspective, I'd love to be able to spend. I'm a sports enthusiast. I'm a coach, throughout town, and that I would love to be able to have the money in our budget to sort of just support this and have it be done with 3 years ago. But that isn't the reality. And I think that, Peter, Bill, and Phil, you guys also respect that and realize it, that this is going to take a great effort from the community and fundraising. And, I appreciate you really taking the lead on this and really sort of doing this and not letting it die, right? And I like that. I do want to relook at the language now after having this conversation and just being comfortable, that is, our end of the bargain. And it's very easy, even if it came up and I didn't like the number that the town was being asked to support, it is in asking the town, saying that it would be too much and that the fundraising wasn't a large enough percentage to feel comfortable. The ask saying that this needs to move forward and bring it to the town for a vote, I don't think is unreasonable. But again, I know personally, I feel better after this conversation, but I just want to take another look at that, rereading the contract after, having that clarified by you guys.
So, David, have you read the MOU thoroughly? Because this is something we've worked on. Even
I have,
Naomi has agreed. And I think it's something that, they're doing a lot. This group has done a lot, as you said, and it's something that we need to not look a gift horse in the mouth. And like Phyllis said, he doesn't have any skin in the game because his kids have now graduated.
So
But
I
it's a
have read it,
community
Stacey,
use.
and it was to the point where I actually had these questions coming in. So again, now after hearing the explanation, I want to go and make sure that I'm comfortable with the wording.
So in the MOU, I have a question in number 6. It's the, let's see, I'm trying to count the periods here.
David, do you have someone want to pull up the MOU so we can all be on the same page? I have it up if you want to give me authority to share it, unless someone else.
Yep. Let me see. I don't have it up on my computer. I have it up on my iPad.
Michelle, if you grant me the screen share, I can put it up. I already have it up on the screen.
And I've got it too.
Yes.
Okay, all right.
Stacey
And I've got
said
it
she had
too.
So I got it. Stacey.
David, while this is coming up, I want to clarify something I said earlier when I talked about no time frame. We did stick a time frame in there for the fundraising. We said, we needed to do that within 2 years. Again,
I knew that 2 years came from someplace. Thank you.
What the potential is, but there is no time frame for the school committee to then act, I don't think.
Well, that's in 6. So at the end of the second sentence, it says consistent with the Hamilton-Wyndham Regional School District policies, the funds will be raised and placed in a separate revolving account, which will be controlled by the HWRSDC. What is that?
Hamilton-Wyndham Regional School District Committee.
Okay, so the D should not be there, but okay. And then it does say right there that we would return the funds if the project doesn't begin within 2 years. I'm not sure once we receive a gift that we can return the money.
That would pose a problem, I think, for our donors if if you couldn't. So I think your council has looked this over extensively, so I hope that she would have flagged that by now.
You could return
Council-
a gift. It depends on how the award is made.
And Naomi, our council did agreed with how this wording was.
Okay.
She was okay with it. She has gone through, we have had several different revisions and the wording, and she was okay with the wording.
So, all right. So what I'm seeing here, and this is what got me thinking, that should for any reason the project fail to commence within 2 years from the date of the gift, even if you guys raise the money in 2 years, you're holding it in a private fund, so we don't need to necessarily accept it as soon as you're done raising the money, because then that would put us on a timer.
There's something though that we would go, once they finish their fundraising, that we would get the money from the town.
Well, if we sign this tonight,
It's when we turn over the donation
Right.
to the school district.
if we sign this tonight and they gave themselves a 2-year window to raise the money, right, they would have to then turn it over, because otherwise this is basically a 4-year contract from whenever we sign, right? Because they're 2 years plus our 2 years of accepting,
No,
but they
because
don't have
their
to turn
2
it
years-
over right away.
Their 2 years doesn't start until they turn over the gift, and we have gotten all of the money secured from the towns.
I think that's 2 different 2 years. Am I wrong?
Yes.
Yeah, it's two
The
different.
original donation to the turf committee can be established by whatever the donor wants to do, right? It could be no time frame. It could be you have a month to use it. It doesn't really matter. They are the original recipients, right? Not the school committee. So their fundraising will need to be able to relinquish those funds, or at least tell the donors that those funds will be then redirected to the school committee, which would then accept that gift from the committee, not from the original donor. Does that make sense? So it loses its identity once it reaches the turf committee, the turf group. Because in our gift,
I mean, it makes a lot more sense now after hearing this, right? Because when I read this last week, I was thinking that gave us we were all of a sudden on the clock for 2 years, which I don't see this happening in 2 years. Just just looking at what FY 20 and FY 21 and FY 22 are probably just going to look like from a budgetary standpoint. So that's where my concern was right there, that sentence, which I am now put at ease with, right? So I now that you guys have explained that to me, I'm okay with that.
I don't see a scenario where the turf committee raises its money and then marches into the school committee and says, you got 2 years, get it in front of the voters, because we're all in this together. We don't want this to fail. So if we're in the middle of, Great Recession 3, and we managed to find $1.5 million, but there's no chance that the town is going to vote for a, $15 million edifice, then we're going to be talking, and we're either going to be scaling the project back or saying we should push this back, or maybe we should return the money to the people. There's going to be communication, because we don't want this to fail.
Yeah, no, and Peter, I hope you don't get the wrong idea. This isn't about sort of trying to hold anything back. This is making sure that we weren't shooting ourselves in the foot with this timeline. That's what I was worried about. I really appreciate everything you're doing, and to say, hey, right now, does this make sense? Right? Like, this might have made sense in February, but we're in a really crazy May right now. Does it still make sense? And like I said, I am really thankful that you guys came on and you helped walk me through that, because I'm much more comfortable this week than I was last week.
Can I ask how you came up with the $1.5 million goal?
It's a what I would call a swag. We haven't done a study. We don't know what's possible in this community. We don't know what's possible in this environment. And it's a number that we think we can achieve, because, as I said, I don't want to set us up for failure. But again, as I said, it's probably not the minimum, or excuse me, it's just a minimum.
Well, yeah, because I think, you already have $500,000, and I'm pretty sure there's an institution in town that's going to give you $600,000. So,
well, that'd be great.
Again, I'm going to reiterate, this is a good faith partnership.
No, I agree. And if there's any person in the town that I would trust more than Peter Gordeau, there's not many. So,
don't leave out Phil Tachi too.
To me,
stroke his ego.
I don't actually know Phil that well. But to me, Peter's word is Peter's word, and you can take that to the bank. So if Peter says it's a partnership, it's a partnership, and his word is good. So
yeah, we've always approached it as a partnership project. And that's just not just Peter and I. There's a lot of other unnamed people who have helped us out, and who have gone to every meeting. Sean Timmons has tried to help us shepherd this through. We're not backing away from it. We truly are committed to the community. Peter is a lifelong resident. I'm a 22-year plus resident. I just want to do the right thing for the community and the kids. And to Peter's point, if we're in recession number 3, yeah, we're going to scale it back. And in regards to, we have the right things at the right time to be constructed, that's what we'll do. We're not just going to go out there for all the bells and whistles and shiny metal objects. We're going to do the right things that achieve the original intent of the Gale study, which was return the town fields and parks to a normal play state for passive and active, and to make a safe environment for our school athletes who don't who shouldn't have to drive through town and out of town to practice and enjoy their athletic events. And that's why the campus of the high school and middle school is the best location. So that's where we're coming from.
David, may I ask a quick question?
Yeah, please do, Peter.
Just following up on number 6, upon completion of its fundraising effort, who determines the completion of the fundraising effort? And if it is over and they come before the school committee, are we required to say accept the donation, or can we say continue fundraising? How does it work, I guess?
From our standpoint, we could table it, just keep tabling it. But
I just want to know, I guess, who determines the completion of the fundraising, and then is the school committee required to accept it at that
We're not
time?
required to accept it, but
and I don't see anything in here that would require them to need to necessarily turn it over as soon as they're done. I would imagine, and forgive me if I'm speaking out of turn here, that at some point it would be clear that, like, okay, we're not, well, the well is dry. This is what we're working with.
I think the intent was that we need to know that the school committee is behind this project. However this project gets defined at the end of the Gale study, we need to know that this school committee and school committees in future years remain behind it, because we're going to need the school committee to take this to the community, assuming it's an override. We're going to need the school committee to take this to the community, and that's what the quid pro quo is. We go out and raise some money, and you guys agree to find the funding for the balance by taking it to the community. Now, we don't know what the balance is because we haven't defined the project, but we've tried to define those things that we could. And I think that, I think that it's between the first paragraph and paragraph 6, I think the intent was, okay, guys, if we show up 3 years from now with, $1.7 million and we've met our goal, and, we beat our heads against the ground, and that's all we could raise, that now, the school committee remained committed to taking this to the community. And so, no, I'm sorry, I'm sort of losing my train of thought here, but there is an expectation that if we do our thing, we need to be able to tell our donors that school committee's on board and they're going to take this to the community once we're done with our piece of it.
And it's very possible that the town could vote it down.
Correct.
We have to do that, right?
Right, and that's where I think the communication comes in, where I don't think there's ever that, hey, the MOU says you must, and the MOU doesn't. The MOU is much, it's much much softer than that. But I think what we don't want is to get to the end of our fundraising and find out that the school committee says, yeah, we don't really want to do this anymore.
well, I
And I
think
think the hard part for me is the part where we get to taking it to the community, knowing kind of that our fiscal reality is going to be what it is for a pretty long time. And that, we already can't, are looking at not funding very basic educational things. I can't see myself getting behind taking a project like this out to people knowing what the other priorities are.
Like everyone, what tomorrow holds is unknown. We can't predict what it's going to look like in September. We can't predict what it's going to look like a year from now. So I don't know if we really, no one can, what I'm trying to say is no one knows what's going to happen, but I think we need to commit to something right now that's going to better our community and better our schools. And this is a step in the right direction. It's something that's been kicked around forever, or at least 10 years, 11 years. So I just feel like we need to take decisive action right now in good partnership and just move forward.
What is being asked of the community in the current version of the budget relative to the Gale $65,000?
It's in our override, $65,000 to put.
To update the study.
Okay,
Yeah.
so if the override passes, this goes through. I guess I would point out that at the end of the Gale study, which, you know, again, might take, I don't know how long it's going to take, 90 or 120 days, something like that. Then the school committee will vote to proceed with development of the project, subject to getting the funding in the future and receipt of the donation. So this has you all have the potential to unwind this at the end of the Gale study if you can't come up with if you can't vote to proceed with the development of this. And we want to know that now. We want to know whether this school committee supports the project that comes out of this and whether future school committees support the project.
No, I think the MOU is well developed to protect both sides through, the annual vote. I also, in 6, it's something about when you've determined that the scope is sufficiently within line of the original project. Like, we've had issues with that before, so it's good that be agreed upon. I'm concerned that you guys are going to do a lot of work and we're not going to get the field. But if you believe that you can go to the voters and you can convince the voters, then who am I to stop you? Like, go for it.
Well, I mean, obviously the project can be scalable. Michelle, I have a question for you though. Just as sort of how they're phrasing this conversation. We can't obligate future
No, we can't.
school committees to do anything. I mean, this MOU is what it is, but that's something we can't promise you.
But that's why we're asking for a roll call vote, or I call it a roll call vote.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a straw poll, but we want to know with every successive school committee that we're still, working towards something that the school committee supports and wants.
Yeah, and I think that's totally appropriate.
Yeah.
I think that's
And,
exactly,
to that point,
that's what we should have had a long time ago.
yep.
Also, just so you know, our legal counsel did say it didn't have to have a roll call vote every year. Once we voted it in, then that would be a project that moved forward. And I know that Peter and Phil, they wanted that to make sure everybody was behind this project. So I'm just saying that legal did say, why are you asking for a roll call vote every year? Because this is not required. And she doesn't see that it's needed, because once you push this forward, that's what we're working on.
Yeah, but we can't commit a future school committee to doing a bond.
That's understood. But there are other ways to raise the funds. I mean, we could go back and try to fundraise again, or, there could be, instead of a bond, they might have the cash on hand to give us the cash out of their budget. But I mean, we just have to work with what we can work with.
Right.
No, I appreciate that. And please forgive us. Sort of, Michelle and I have been sort of at this for quite some time now, and we kind of, sometimes we come off as sort of, well, let's just say not optimistic with what the town will support at times. And, it's not, it's really just sort of want to protect all the work that you do and not want to make sure that we're sort of dotting all our I's and crossing our T's and going through this. So, again, I just want to appreciate and just say it.
No, that's understood, David.
Thank you, guys.
I appreciate that, David. And I certainly take Michelle's comments the way that they're intended, which is for the overall good of everything. But to Peter and I, our point basically is we just need to know when we go out to potential donors, their first most often cited question is this going to be a reality? What's the likelihood of this happening? And we have to be able to tell them we've got the support of the school committee, and we're now in the support of the committees and the towns and the communities behind us. And that's going to be through our outreach and our education. But it starts with the school committee saying, yes, we're behind these volunteers and what they want to help achieve for the overall 2 communities.
I think it's important to sort of note, really, just to sort of underline everything, that this is a need. it's going to happen at some point. And you and your committee are working at trying to make that reality, sooner rather than later. Because no matter what, we have severe infrastructure needs, especially athletically. So that really just has to be said as well. I just sort of in interest of sort of time, I'm wondering if we have a motion to accept the MOU and then just have it second, and then any sort of further discussion just to.
I make a motion that the Hamilton Wyndham School Committee accepts the MOU between the school committee and the turf committee.
Second.
DC Metternich with a second. Any further discussion?
Did Vinny weigh in on this at all?
Well, wait, he was there at all the.
He's been at all the
committee
meetings and he's
Yeah.
seen the documents, and he didn't have any comments as far as changing or not agreeing, and he thinks that we worked hard on it, and just basically he didn't have comments, I should say, on any changes or whatnot, but he was involved in the whole time on all of this.
Michelle, what's the nature of your question? What do you?
Whether or not he felt like this was operationalizable, I guess is the word.
Yeah. So I will also say that, in the committee meetings, Tom, Gary, and Craig, Vinny and Julie were all present, along with me, Michelle, and Stacy. And Naomi was brought in to look at the actual document more than once.
Yeah.
I talked to her specifically about my concerns way early on. Those were addressed, and we wrote those into the MOU. So I will also say one other thing, which is that the school committee is taking on the mantle of this because it's on school property.
Right.
But this really is a community need, right? Because it's not just from the school committee; it came from the rec department, it came from the private sports clubs, the youth sports groups. I mean, so this is not just for our students. I mean, the primary beneficiary would be, but there is a use agreement to allow the rec department to use the fields, to allow use for private citizens. So there is a need that we're trying to address for the whole community, not just the school.
But Gina, I agree with that wholeheartedly. But one of the things I was thinking about earlier is that, this is probably going to come out the wrong way, and I don't mean it quite the way it's going to sound, but if we wanted to, the genesis of this project years ago was soccer and Little League and lacrosse and youth football needing a decent field to play on in bad weather, early in the spring, that kind of thing, because we'd all bitch and moan because we couldn't get on our various fields because it would rain or snow in April, and every other town around us was practicing, but we couldn't get out there and play. And it would be far less expensive to go throw a carpet down at Donovan Field, but it wouldn't serve the community, it wouldn't serve the high school the same way it would serve the community. And I think the youth sports could meet their needs less expensively elsewhere, but I don't think it would be for the greater good.
Fair enough.
And then we did not resolve the issue in 9 that the turf group will have no authority or no standing to request CPC money in Wyndham.
So can I respond to that one? I think I don't know about standing, and I think you're right, given that the project would occur on school grounds, that the school would need to be the official applicant. I think this is a question of what group is best positioned to effectively approach the CPCs in both towns.
I'll just tell you, they won't talk to you. So
I talked to.
I had to fill out the
talked to one member.
application for the playground because they wouldn't talk to the Friends of Bucher. So
Okay. And if that turns out to be the case, then we'll coordinate with you guys, and you guys can lead the pitch. But if it's simply a matter of the school committee signing the application at the end of the day, or the school signing the application at the end of the day, I personally think it may make more sense for a group of community members with Little League in tow and youth soccer in tow to go before the CPCs.
oh, absolutely. And not at the time of the application, way like when they're doing their needs assessment.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
To
understandable.
undertake the process.
Yeah, I think what's important for the school committee to understand is in relation to paragraph 9, the so-called patent fund, when the town voted near unanimous to accept that and earmark it for recreational fields, it was made contingent upon, should the field improvements be made on school property, that Wyndham will contribute their percentage share of that if it's to go towards a school district project. So that's why there's a contingency there. We won't be able to get those patent funds unless Wyndham agrees to go along with it. So that's going to be a necessity.
I don't know. We might be dead in the water right now, Phil.
Well, then we'll just go back to Hamilton and we'll vote again to use the funds without Wyndham, and then we'll probably
Yeah.
go in a different direction.
Yeah. Okay.
But I think we'll prevail with Wyndham.
Yeah, because you're getting into the,
Yeah.
I'm getting $750,000 for 250 type of deal.
We'll see.
Exactly.
Any other comments? Jean Lee,
Yes.
Stacy Metternich,
Yes.
Peter Walczyk,
Yes.
Michelle Horgan,
Yes.
Pi Prima,
No.
Michelle Bailey,
Yes.
David Polito's a yes. So that's 6-1. Again, guys, thank you for all the work that you've done. Thank you to the negotiations committee too for just sort of going through. This has been a long,
Not
long process.
negotiations. Sorry, David.
I'm sorry. Capital committee for really
I
getting
do
this
have,
done.
sorry, I have, based on Michelle's comment, I have one change to make on this MOU, and it's just basically making sure that we make it as Hamilton Wyndham Regional School Committee and take out the D.
The D. So I
So
actually meant to make that amendment.
as I was
Yep.
looking at it, and I apologize that it should have come out. So,
Well, it's all
Yes.
over the whole document.
well, that's what I'm saying. I should have taken it out and didn't.
It's
So-
just
So-
to define-
As long as we
It's
take
just
the
a
D
defined
out,
term.
I'm all set. Yes.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's defined up at the top, so feel free to take it out, but I don't think
Yeah,
you need it.
it's just weird because, as you may be aware, we've had some issues between the school district administration and the school committee and the community on projects where there's been fundraising. So we'd like it to be very clear as to whose authority it's under.
That's a
Fair
good
enough.
point. Good
Fair
point. Fair enough.
Do we need to amend anything?
Stacy's gonna remove the Ds.
But we,
I think we're good.
we approve this document as it's written, or do we have to amend it?
We should amend it. Make the
But do
motion.
we need a
for it.
motion for that?
Make it.
Make it, Peter.
It's really a Scrivener's error. I mean, it doesn't really.
It is. It really is a
It
Scrivener's
doesn't
error.
need to be. It doesn't need to be
Okay.
revoted, but
If it's
you
just-
can if you want.
It's just a matter of,
Okay.
Yeah.
You guys are okay with it? I'm fine with it.
Scrivener's
So,
error.
yep. All right.
I love that, Jean. Scrivener's error. I love that.
Well, it really is.
It is. I agree. But
All right, Phil, Peter, Bill, thank you for coming. Thank you for sort of walking us through and all the work that you've done. You're free to go have dinner now.
Thank you, David. Thank you, Michelle, and everyone for
Will
your
you
help.
guys, Stacy, will
Stacy,
you
appreciate it.
will you send a new copy? Will you send a new copy when you fix your Scrivener's error? Do you want me to do it, or?
I can do that, but thank
Right.
you.
Will you send me a
Thank you,
copy of
Phil,
what
and
you've
thank you, Peter, for all your
Thank you,
time and
Peter.
help.
Yes,
Thank
thank
you
you.
for all your future work.
Well said. Thank you.
All right. So up next is FY21 budget communications talking point, which I think is becoming the necessity sort of becoming exponentially more and more needed. You know, we're with Wyndham. So I forgot yesterday was Tuesday because that's the world we live in, and I did not watch either of the BOA. Board of Selectmen meetings. So please forgive my ignorance in this conversation at the beginning of this conversation. But you know, the messaging seems to be clear that. Oh, go ahead, Michelle.
So, you know that Wenham did not meet, they canceled their meeting. So
They did cancel the meeting.
Because they believe that they cannot schedule a town meeting until they, meaning one of their selectmen, believes that they cannot schedule a town meeting until we vote our budget and it goes to the FinCom, and then the FinCom sends it to the Board of Selectmen, and then they can schedule it. I believe that can happen in very short order, and I don't believe that should forestall.
Right.
Hamilton
And
is going forward, but last night they reconsidered their support of the budget. Some of the selectmen were confused when they voted the last time. They thought they were voting to put our budget on the warrant in two separate articles, in the whatever the 5% and then the other article, they did not believe when they voted that they were voting support or whatever, a recommendation to approve. So last night they rescinded that vote and they have made a decision that they will make a recommendation on the floor of the town meeting. I would encourage us to go to a meeting in the near future and encourage them to, and I think they will, once we have our budget approved, to make their whatever recommendation known a lot sooner, because what we don't want to do is go to town meeting where there's confusion, because we want the town meeting to be as efficient as possible, and we don't want people to be as together for any time that's more than the bare minimum that's necessary, or the bare maximum that's necessary. So that's where we're at. I think both boards want us to vote a budget. I don't know exactly why, because I don't think the goal of any of our voting is to change their assessment.
Right.
We have a budget that's voted, we have an assessment that's voted, and our goal right now is sort of a zero fund game. We're going to get less money, so we're going to spend less money.
But we haven't voted in a new budget. We haven't voted in the decrease in state funding.
We have
so that's
a budget
something
voted
we should.
for. We have
we
budget
absolutely
voted
should. I
for,
agree with
period.
you, Stacey, but it's not going to change what's voted on at town meeting. The assessment will still be the same.
Right.
I understand, but we should vote that piece in, because otherwise, if we don't, then we have no drop in, and so it's an increase to both towns. If we don't
it's not an increase in both
it's
towns.
Not.
It's the exact same number.
But you need,
we
but
could
you
take
need
our
to drop the
current
state funding
budget.
part.
I know, but we're taking two things and we're dropping both of them. The amount of money the towns are going to need to commit is identical.
I understand it, but we're getting 20% less state funding, so we need to lower our budgets by the 1.274 million.
We need to lower our spending.
Yes, so we need to vote that in, because I agree with Wyndham. We don't have a budget. We haven't voted in that 1.274. So basically, that would assess the towns more.
Guys, we need to be clear in our communication here. We have a voted on budget, period. Right? We do. We have one in place. Okay? With assessments to both towns. We have been working on situations on how to decrease a potential cut, our budget by a potential 20% cut from state funding. Okay. And agreeing with you, Stacey, yes, it is time that we vote that for clarity purposes. But as Michelle said, that it does absolutely nothing for the towns because their assessment is still going to be the same at the end of the day. Right. And what I was going to say is I think for clarification purposes that we should probably move to do that tonight because we don't need to tell them where that 1.27 is coming from. As for when it comes to, town meeting, we don't need to, we can just say we're going to do this and then we'll figure it out as we go since we're in constant negotiations with all our unions and, so that doesn't need to be.
You have to put it in the
I'm looking at you,
DESE
Michelle.
categories.
What's that?
It has to be by DESE category.
The budget has to be presented to the towns in DESE categories?
Yeah.
Is that in the regional agreement?
Yep.
All right, so we couldn't do
Yet
this till
another
next
reason why
week.
we
But
need
you
to put it in the regional
could
agreement.
vote it. You could vote like we will reduce the budget by blah blah blah, and then next week give the detail.
Yeah.
We could do that.
Yeah.
Sure. We could
Which
do
I
that.
think is the way to go, right? So then no one else could keep playing these games like they don't know where their number is. They know what their number is.
Well,
we made it clear how we're going about this from day one.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's more to the issue that I think in the next year we can try again to uncover and to build a relationship, and I think this year actually there was relationships built, but then I think, there's been some rockiness recently because we're going to be having power change and that, always causes a ripple.
So, well, Mary Beth's right here, so we can blame her.
But
So
we're
go
not
right in
going to
the
make
middle
her talk and put her in a position that's going to be.
No, and I wouldn't want to do that. Obviously, what we're trying to do is create the smoothest welcome,
Right.
welcome that we can for her.
Yeah. And the best thing we can do, is to have an approved budget when she walks through the door, because there's going to be so much planning and changing that's going to need to be done that to have to try and figure out how much money you have to do that and make changes it's just more than superhuman possible.
Yeah, if I could follow up on that, Michelle, because I think we're sitting with two major issues. One certainly is what is the budget that we're looking at, but at the same time, we have an open question as to what school is actually going to look like in the fall. And those two combined are really challenging. So if we can close out the financial piece, that's really going to help with planning.
Yeah.
Really
So
good point.
do we have the exact number, or would we just vote? Does somebody have the budget so that we could vote a number that's 1.27 whatever less, or somebody's going to need to look up some documents and do some math if we're going to vote.
Right.
I mean, we could recess and do that, or
Trying to think of where to
Was
look.
the information that we got last week?
there's a number on there, but we would need to take our original. Ooh, it might be because from the hearing part, it might be in there, Jean. You're right. I think
It's in last week's meeting when we had the hearing.
But did we get numbers down to the dollar? Or was it rounded to like one? I mean, because we always say 1.2, right?
We had there was
actual
1.247
right?
Well, there were actual cuts that were proposed for that first level to get us there, and that was an actual number.
Okay,
but
Whereas, if you go by 20% less state aid, it was based on what Vinny said, it was 1.274.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay.
So yeah, that's the number that's sticking out in my head too. But I think that if we, make the motion and vote this in this week, and then next week we get a little bit.
So I just want to say there is a person who's supposed to be on vacation
Mm-hmm.
who apparently thought a great thing to do tonight would be to watch this meeting.
This is the way he relaxes, Michelle. Come on, this is the way he
So if
relaxes.
you give that person 5 minutes, we'll be good. So is there something else to talk about after this and we can come back to it?
I can hop. Let's see. Well, I mean, we're here in in messaging, right? So, I'm just.
There's nothing in chat. I've turned chat off. There's no
No.
chat.
But I meant like that we're here. That right now on our agenda, we're here about. I don't even know where I just shut down the wrong stuff. I'm sorry, guys.
So Michelle,
I think
let me
all
ask, can I
it
ask you a
talks
question
about
the-
is a discussion. It talks about the discussion based on the sheet that went
Messaging.
out, the
It
message.
says-
So we could discuss that.
It says budget communication talking points.
Well, we need to talk about that too. But
Yeah.
I think Stacy and David are right. If we have a budget that's been decreased, it's going to be easier to say it's time to schedule the meeting because this is what we're going to do.
Right. If they're going to keep pushing it back to us, okay, we'll bite and.
So
We'll do it.
can I ask Michelle a question though? Because I didn't watch the meeting. So I thought I saw something on HW Cam for the Wyndham Board of Selectmen last night. Is that not posted? No, is it earlier meeting? Okay. Either way.
They didn't meet last night.
They didn't meet. Okay. So then maybe if it wasn't last night, do you know if the conversation on the Wyndham side is still to, obviously they will need to override in Wyndham.
Mhm.
Is there any consideration to adjusting that percentage, or are they still locked into whatever we had before?
So I've talked to the chair of the Board of Selectmen and the chair of the FinCom. They are looking to reduce their own budget, which will reduce their own override, but they are not considering reducing the amount that would be in our override. So if our assessment stays the same, then the override stays the same. And there's no commitment at this point. If we were to say, reduce the assessment, that our portion of that override would be reduced. There's no discussion of that at this point.
Okay.
Well, there's also the ballot that already went out too, that they're not changing. So that's a huge issue because the chair decided that the ballot is to go out. So if people are voting, which they're pushing for absentee ballot or by mail. And so that's not changing at all. And I've gotten questions basically like, how does this impact us? What are we voting for?
Okay.
Right.
So,
and it'll be weird. Like if they reduce, like, I don't know what happens if they reduce their override and then they get a vote and the vote is a no, and they didn't actually vote on their actual number. I don't really know the legalities of that. That's going to be a legal question.
yeah. So the Wyndham override question identifies the amount from the schools and an amount from the towns. Okay.
Well, yeah. There's an amount from the school for operating. There's an amount from the school for the debt exclusion that we need. So Phil and Peter, if you're still listening, we need some help getting that approved so we can do the Gale study. And then there's 3 debt exclusions for the town, one for leaf pickup, one for like a fire truck, and then one for operating.
Okay.
So you need to turn that ballot over, my friends, and fill in the bubbles.
Yeah. So let me ask you, I will say that I'm embarrassed because I'm asking a Wyndham resident for about Hamilton politics, but so for the Hamilton side, since clearly you watched it last night, it's still going to be in 2 warrants, if I understand it correctly, right? Our question, okay.
Yeah.
And the amount, I think that they had an original formula for the second warrant. Is that
they're maintaining
changing at all?
that 5% thing? Yeah, they're maintaining that 5% thing.
Okay, got it.
Even though the Hamilton FinCom recommended having one warrant.
Correct.
So they're bucking the recommendation of the FinCom.
Well, ultimately the authority of how the warrant is put together, it rests with the Board of Selectmen, so they can do as they see
As they want,
appropriate. But there certainly could be either a motion by someone, and if the school committee wanted to make it an official request, we could officially ask and let them know that we were going to make a motion to put them together, or we could, you know, ask a friend to do that, you know, but you know, it's a strategy. It's also, you know, maybe just go and just let them both be voted yes, and just focus our attention on getting people to vote. But we need to have
Well, I
talking
think it's going
points.
to depend on how many people.
And I think
it
you know,
depends on how many people participate at town meeting, right? Because 2 years ago,
It
they did
does.
the same thing. They split it into two warrants, and I made a motion on the floor to combine them. That passed, and we voted it in, right?
Yeah.
The second year, and then the following year, it was all in one warrant because they realized, the FinComs and the Board of Selectmen realized that splitting into two warrants made no sense. You just increase the chances of failure, which doesn't actually help anybody.
Right.
So,
and it actually, in this particular case, will open up, like, I would really encourage them to reconsider that. The goal of the town meeting here is to, as efficiently and effectively, pass the financial warrants that are necessary for the efficient operation of the towns and the schools. And it just kind of opens up a opportunity for extra debate. It doesn't really, it's not in the end necessarily going to have a different effect, because if there's a no vote on our whole budget, there's a no vote on our budget. If there's a no vote on one of those articles, there's a no vote on our whole budget. So it doesn't really, in the end, doesn't really have an effectively different change. So I would
especially on the Hamilton side, it says there is no need for an override, right? Wyndham has
Right.
an override, so they need to split it into two.
Right.
So there is a strategy here. There's a play being made here by the Hamilton FinCom.
Mhm. So
Well,
that's exactly
it
what I
would
was
make
going to
sense
say, right?
if they were splitting it
So-
along the same number. If they split it along the same number lines as the way Wyndham has been forced to cut it, that would be fine. But it's a totally different random number. So it's just sort of like cutting our budget up into 4 pieces. And whatever. Like, if that's what they want to do, that's fine. But it just won't create the efficiency in a town meeting that they could have. And they could get the same result
but
with
they,
a no
they don't
vote.
care. So they, what you know, and what
They
we
might
need.
care. They do care.
Jean, do you know if the, from my understanding, the Hamilton FinCom voted yes for Article 1, or to go on the consent for the 5%, but for the other piece of it, for the school budget, it was 3-2 against it? Do you know?
No, that was the Board of Selectmen.
Yeah, the FinCom recommended one warrant, and it was 4-1 for one warrant, and then it went to the Board of Selectmen, and that's the numbers that Michelle's talking.
Okay.
And last night, one of the issues was that there were only 4 members there. So 2 members wanted to do one thing, and then a couple of members. So it was kind of convoluted. I mean, they might reconsider. You know, we could ask them. We certainly could let them know if our intention is to make a motion to put them back together.
Right.
You know,
Which I think it should definitely be, because, you know, again, this has nothing to do with the efficiency of, you know, town meeting. This has nothing to do with actually giving the, you know, voting community a fair shot at voting. It's actually, you know, sort of done disingenuously to purposely try to cause confusion and, you know, to push it on the school committee that they, you know, they only think that we should be having, you know, 5% increase. And, you know, as we've tried to explain year in, year out, that creating an arbitrary number does no good. It doesn't matter what arbitrary number you have.
I think they're trying to provide their voters with choice. But to me, there is just a choice. You either vote yes or you vote no. Whether you vote yes to one amount and no to another is still a no. So just vote no for the whole thing, or just vote yes for the whole thing. But to vote yes for part and no to another is the same as voting no to the whole thing. So just vote no.
May I
Don't
ask a
vote
question?
no, because no's the wrong answer.
So I think there are a couple things we can do. One is to make a formal request of Hamilton to combine the two warrant articles into one. I think we can certainly do that. I don't know where it should come from. It probably should come from the chair, honestly, I guess. I'll sign on to it and we can have the
I
support
mean, I have
of the
no
school
problem doing
committee, the full school committee, I believe. Yeah. And if
I mean,
that doesn't work, then
If
we
that's
can,
what we
we
want to
can
do, we
strategize.
can send a letter with all of our names on it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Peter
No,
has his hand raised.
Okay, Peter.
Sorry.
No, I guess what I'm trying to understand is when do we have the discussion on the reduction from the $1.27 million that we're going to get less in revenue from the state next year?
What do you mean? When do we have that discussion?
Well,
Next week.
there was a whole number of recommendations about how to reduce the budget, what cuts were going to be made, the 23 folks affected. Do we debate that as part of this budget discussion?
I think that in a way, yes. I mean, there's no sort of easy answer, right? Because there are so many variables up in the air of like what we actually need to do, right? So when we're talking with negotiating with our unions is to try and see if we can make any concessions there. That's money that comes off of the top that could turn into positions not needing to be let go, right? So this is sort of it's a active, fluid conversation. At some point we are going to have to sort of put our money where our mouth is and really just come, and just say this is what it is. But we know the number we're aiming for, and we sort of need to have as much time as we can to sort of get to figure out what comprises that number, how we get to that actual number. And so it definitely needs to be done more robustly moving forward. But I at this time tonight to move forward to get the all the other boards in town sort of moving and off of our plate back onto theirs. I just think that we're voting for the overall number, and then sort of figuring out backfilling how we get to that number next week or the week after, and obviously trying to move the sooner the better, but at the same time making sure that we're not that we're not speaking before we should be.
I see. So we're voting on the original number that we submitted, and then we have to find out where we're going to find $1.27 million.
So we're voting on the number, the overall number, right? With the 1.27 no longer coming from the state.
Right. Okay.
Because like I said, I think we can sort of have a very cursory vote here. Think of it as sort of a February, initial budget conversation, so that they could say, all right, well, now we know what the number is. And then, we continue to do our work as we do throughout February to then vote in our final budget, in February, early March with
I just wanted to make sure we had the opportunity to weigh in on the proposed, 23 folks that are going to be cut. And I know the people watching are watching, they're concerned with that as well.
Yeah, but ultimately, we also have to as the summer progresses, we might find out that we're going to have different needs in our schools. And so there may need to be even more adjustments.
The known unknowns.
We may find out that we have to have 2 more nurses because we need to take temperatures more often, or we may find out we have to have
different desks, shields between the
adjustment counselor. Julie told us earlier today, when we were meeting about negotiations, that we might need an extra $500,000 for personal protective devices for our staff and students when they return to school. I mean, that's no chump change, my friends.
Isn't that under under special funding with the COVID-19 that we can get some of that funding for the PPD? And then
It
what
depends.
about,
Is it,
to add
is the
on?
Senate going to ever take
It
that
could
up
be
and pass
busing
it?
too.
Could be additional
Busing
busing.
could be affected.
Right.
Yeah, because you can't pack a bus full of kids
Right.
and have that 6 feet social distancing.
Oh, and
Yep.
Bailey's bus will never
Yes.
be full again. No more 3 to a seat for those high schoolers.
Okay, well, thank you. Thank you for answering that question. I'm just concerned for those about the cuts being proposed.
And
I
people,
wanna-
and if we know for certain that ultimately we're going to have to make changes, it's better to let people know sooner than later so that they can make their own adjustment and their own plans for what they're going to be doing next year.
Yeah. Okay, understood. Now I get it. So we're voting on that original number, and then we go back and make adjustments based on that reduced revenue from the state and trying to factor in the costs of the known unknowns.
Yes,
Right.
I have not heard from the vacationer yet, just saying. And I not, unless the vacationer is
If he's smart, he will.
under some alias. I don't know. I've seen that person come into a meeting. Oh yeah. It might be in our email.
I was actually just looking at the email and I didn't see it. Hold on.
I just heard my little thing go ding, so I'm sure it's there.
There's someone named Concern.
Yeah, but that's not this.
That's not.
We just
that's
got an
not our
email,
concerned
so-
citizen.
I have it. I have it here. Do you guys have it, or is it just to me? I wonder.
It
Oh,
looks like
it's
it's just to
I'm
you.
gonna forward it
Just
to
you.
everybody.
I haven't seen an email.
Yeah, it's here. Let me figure out how to forward on this silly iPad. Oh, there it is. Okay. Yes, I'm going to include. Good night. So Mahala should make note that there's I don't know, some sort of budget motion thing in the minutes. So.
You get that, Michaela? Budget motion thing.
Once we see it, we'll know what it is. Okay, so I sent it to you guys. Now I'm going to open it.
All right. Yeah, it's the wording for the budget.
What I don't know is if this was the original motion or if this is the new.
That's what I'm trying to read to. Move it. Yeah, because look at the total number at the top.
Yeah, I think this is the amended one.
That's definitely the amended one.
You started with the $39 million budget.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Do you want me to make a motion?
Please.
Yeah. Went down to
Okay.
37.
Read this. I wanna read this
So,
one.
and just for the record,
new
Michelle
one.
Horgan. Excuse me.
This is the new motion you would make if you want to take the 1.247.
And I just want to just
whatever
make
you want.
for those watching at home, Michelle Horgan is just reading verbatim the email that came from our vacationing assistant superintendent of finance.
All right. I'm off mute. Okay, good. I move that the Hamilton Wyndham Regional School Committee vote to adopt the FY21 total general fund expenditures budget of $35,525,504. This amount includes general fund operating expenses after offsets in the amount of $35,112,251 and the general fund debt service expenses in the amount of $413,253. Furthermore, the gross operating expenses of the district before offsets in the amount of $37,023,573 have been allocated to the DESE defined chart of accounts according to the summary by DESE category. I move that the Hamilton Wenham Regional School Committee vote to assess the towns of Hamilton and Wenham combined total of $32,088,532 as the amount necessary to operate and maintain the district, as well as pay debt service for FY21. The district's assistant superintendent shall determine the amount apportioned to each town, and the district's treasurer shall certify such amounts to the respective treasurers of each town within 30 days of this date. May 27th, 2020.
May
Second.
the second. Stacy Metternich with the second. Any further
Okay.
discussion?
Couple of things that
Yep.
has not been allocated to the DESE categories.
Oh.
And the treasurer is gonna make that little thing like toot sweet, not in 30 days.
So,
So we should say something like, and will be apportioned to the DESE categories within 14 days. Maybe
do you
And
want to
then
make
we'll-
an amendment?
So
Want to
moved.
make an amendment?
an amendment that would make, not that it has been allocated, but that it will be allocated within 14 days. It gives
If
us
we
2 meetings in
say,
case something screws up. And then we should say that the treasurer will, whatever, send the apportionment within 7 days maybe, or 14
I'm
days
wondering,
maybe.
so I'm wondering about the specificity of this, how specific this wording is, if it needs to sort of stay that way, and if we're better off making an amendment saying, that the town can expect this DESI categories within 14 days, and from our just doing that as a separate, as an amendment to this. Does that sound? Did I make? I
However
just
we
tripped over my words. That I want to make
Wait,
sure.
what are we saying?
I don't think the town cares. I really don't think the town cares, but we're not actually going to, we don't have all of the numbers apportioned out into the DESE categories. The motion says we do, but we don't.
Right. It's so what I'm taking Michelle's to mean here is that, and where I want to sort of cover our butts is, we're putting this back. Again, we want to now say, okay, towns, here's the budget. I want to make sure that we're sort of covering ourselves. And they're like, oh, well, are you going to break this down to the DESI categories for us, and see if they're just going to, because we don't want the game, to keep going back and forth.
Why don't we do this?
Well, they would say we're
Wait,
playing a game
wait.
too.
The
So
first
don't,
motion can say everything up to the gross operating expenses of the district before offsets in the amount of 37 million will be allocated to the DESI defined chart of accounts, right? Because we don't have it yet. So I'll make that motion to amend the motion to say that in future tense, it will be allocated to the DESI defined chart of accounts.
Second.
In that last sentence.
So, thanks, Michelle. Second by Michelle Horgan. All right.
And then do
Peter,
we want to change the last sentence? Oh, sorry.
We gotta do the
We
motion.
made
by
the
vote.
vote.
amendment.
Yep.
So that covers us.
yeah, we don't have to worry about the treasurer because the assessment isn't changing. So they can just resend the same paperwork.
So the
Let's-
30, again, the 30 age is just to cover us under the,
So is this the same number we voted for in February, or is
No.
this by 1
this is
point?
yes.
This is $1.27 less.
Wait, which number are you talking about, Peter?
The number in this motion that was just made by,
The first motion, right?
yeah,
There's
that's
two
right.
motions on the floor. There's two motions here that we're reading. So I want to make sure that you are voting on the right one and you understand what you're voting on. So
I was
the
thinking-
number that you are talking about, Peter, that you have a question on, is that the
Right.
first motion or the second one? The top one or the bottom one?
I see there's two numbers. It's the first one. Is that reduced by?
Yes.
Yes.
Because the original gross operating expenses that we're starting off with in February was $38.3 million.
Right, I remember that. So
Now we're saying that the gross operating is now 37.023573 million.
but doesn't this change the number for
No.
the town? I thought we were staying at
That's the
8
second.
point.
That's the second motion. That's the one on the bottom.
In the email from Vinny.
Right. That's what I'm looking at.
So we've made the motion of the top portion, which takes out the 1.3 million off the top, right? Because remember, in February we voted for it was a $39 million total for just round numbers.
That's right.
So this Vinny just sent this with the actual number now with the 20% reduction from the proposed 20% reduction from the state.
But the bottom number, the 32.
So we're not voting there yet.
That's
but so
I thought
that's going to be what we're assessing to the towns,
right.
which will be the same number.
The 32.
Yes.
Okay, and so the top one is not what we're assessing the towns, it's what we need to report to
It's the
Desi.
total operating budget of the district for next year. Total operating budget for next year.
Okay. Oh,
It's
thank
the
you. That
37
clears it up. Okay.
number.
All right. So right now,
I'm sorry, what was that?
no problem.
The 37 million is the decreased number.
Yes.
But the assessment to the town stays the same.
Stays the same.
Okay, and so where that 1.274 million comes up with, we have to figure that out. And we have to figure out the cost of the known unknowns. Okay, understood. Thank you for clearing that up for me.
All right. So just to further clarify, right now I'm about to start a roll call vote on the amendment to the motion, which is just cleaning up some of the wording.
Future tense.
Yeah.
About the DESI categories.
All right. So are you good?
I'm good.
All right. Then we'll start with you, Peter Walton.
Yes.
So Jean Lee,
Yes.
Stacy Metternich,
Yes.
Ty Prima,
Yes.
Michelle Horgan,
Yes.
Michelle Bailey,
Yes.
and David Polito's a yes. Now we're going to be doing a roll call vote on the original motion as written, and as stated. So,
As amended.
As amended. I'm sorry. You're right. Thank you. Peter Walczyk.
Yes.
Jean Lee.
Yes.
Stacy Metternich.
Yes.
Ty Prima.
Yes.
Michelle Horgan.
Yes.
Michelle Bailey.
I'm going to vote no.
I'm going to ask you why after this, because I know you're thinking something. David Polito's a yes. What are you thinking? What are you worried about?
I don't know. I don't think we buy anything, but it's fine. Ultimately, I think this is where we'll end up. I just don't know if the timing's right.
Right, but it's sort of cat and mouse game that the towns are forcing us into.
I agree.
But I hear where you're coming from. I can respect that, but we're just running out of time here.
So the talking point that we're trying to create here is that the school committee is committed to a right-sized budget, and that this is what we need to move forward with planning for the fall. So now how are we going to communicate that to our staff And how do we want to communicate that to our voters and the community, our voters in the community, so that they can show their support?
I think that first thing we need to do is be able to explain the complexities of the situation as simply as possible, right? Because I think that part of the confusion has been people purposely trying to create confusion. In saying that you know, while those of us sitting on this meeting right now have been involved, you know, every day, every minute of every day for the past few months, actually trying to figure out where we are in an ever-changing environment. We have the luxury of actually having the best understanding of how this budget actually works. And, you know, so how do we let everybody know that, you know, we are confident in our budget, even though it's not, you know, so we run into, I think a big thing that we sort of run into is the recommended versus unrecommended, you know, or versus where we are now. This isn't our, you know, recommended budget, what we just voted on. Our recommended budget included that 1.274 million, but we have to be, you know, fiscally responsible. And, you know, so I think sort of showing however we can explain that out the most clearly are sort of on where, you know, we're coming from. I think that's really important, because there are some people that are just going to be like, where do I vote? When do I vote? Right. So we need to have that in there. How do I vote? Where do I vote? When do I vote? Right. Just point me to the ballot. But then there's others that are going to want, you know, a little bit further explanation. Right. And this is sort of that, keep it simple, right? Just trying to explain the situation as simply as possible. You know, and obviously, if people have follow-up questions, I feel confident in this group that, you know, we understand the process well enough to be able to answer deeper questions, you know, with more specifics. But I think as a general messaging tool, we want to be concise, you know, but complete. So I'm trying to sort of write out, you know, I guess the best way to sort of put this is, what have you guys heard? What have, you know, what have people been asking you that they're confused about?
Well,
So we have those questions from 384 people or whatever.
can I jump in on one point?
Yeah.
David, take question. What are people talking about? One of my neighbors was adamant she would not vote for any budget that included an override. But now that she has a better understanding that if the budget fails and we need to reduce it another $1 million, there'll be no language, no sports, no theater, no arts, and no music. And that moved her. She said, I would not want to have my child in a district that didn't have world language, sports, theater, arts, or music. And that's what we're facing. That's the stark reality, that if this budget fails, that's what we're looking at.
And we may lose those things anyway if we don't go back to school, or if we go back to school and school looks different. So we can't say just because the budget passes, those things will definitely exist. But
yeah, understood.
You know,
guaranteed to go.
That's
Right.
not guaranteed to go.
Right.
We have to decide if it's a filled budget, what we want to put forward as the next budget, if it fills. So it's not, any guarantees like we're losing sports or fine arts or drama, etc., or the however many employees you're stating, Peter. So this is something that we need to come back with if it fails, but we're hoping for a passed budget.
So I think that, that's a good point, Stacy, that, what we want to be saying here is really this budget is the most effective way. I don't know. This needs to be wordsmithed a little of continuing the normalcy. Again, it needs to be wordsmithed, but of the greatness that is the Hamilton Wenham regional, right? So we're trying to actually continue on as seamlessly as humanly possible with having to make significant budget cuts due to loss of state revenue. And I really think that's the position that we want to be taking, is that we are not trying to affect the classroom. We are trying to keep everything that hopefully if all the ducks are in a row, that we can return to school in the fall and have our school environment look as close as it possibly can to how it was on March 12th when we left.
I mean, I feel like we need to convey some version of the budget that we have right now is as bare bones as it possibly can be to maintain the academic excellence that Hamilton Wenham expects. In that, I'll say that after last week, our last school committee meeting, I haven't heard from as many people ever about the potential to cut out things like language and sports and theater and art. I think people understand that that's a real possibility without funding for those things.
So one of the interesting questions that was in the survey was, why is the education budget being cut by $1.2 million, considering that property taxes have steadily increased each year? So I think we should make clear that we're not cutting the amount of money that will come from property taxes, but the state provides us with money through a formula for Chapter 70. That money, we have been told, will be probably at least 20% less, which is $1.2 million. The unfortunate reality is it could be 25% less or 30% less. And so we have to cut that money out of our budget because we're not getting that money. And we're not going to be able to increase the property taxes to make up that money. So I think we need to be sure somehow to communicate. One of the talking points is our budget was reduced, not because it's good for the schools, but because the state isn't going to give us the money we expected.
Yeah, and Michelle, your point early, but also is, even though your property taxes didn't get decreased, the funding for the school did.
Right.
And I think that's a huge point.
Right.
Because people are, I think, rightfully making the connection of their taxes not being reduced, but the school budget having to pay more for the school. It's not matching up for people, I think.
Right. Is it possible to show what we received for state funding last year, FY20, and what's projected FY21? This is from the state. This is what we got last year. This is this year's. and based on COVID-19, reduce the state reduction in lottery, liquor taxes, restaurant taxes, everything. So they understand, because a lot, like you're saying, a lot of people don't understand where the funding is coming from. They don't understand Chapter 70. I don't know if it's too involved to say this is what Chapter 70 is. This is, what we get reimbursed for circuit breaker. And that might be too much, but some
I
bullets.
think you're getting a little too far
People
into the
did,
weeds.
but people didn't understand. If you looked at some of the survey, people didn't understand, like you said, Michelle. They didn't understand, like, why are we getting less money? Why are we trying to vote down some money? Because they don't understand that we've been told by our state representatives that Bruce Tarr and Brad Hill, that we're going to be getting less, 20% less Chapter 70 circuit breaker. And because we're a regional school, less regional transportation funding. And so that's a big thing for people to understand when I saw some of the comments talking about our taxes are so high and what's going on. We were told minimum, we need to cut it by 20%. So, and unfortunately, a lot of people if you don't follow the budget, you don't understand any of that.
So
So,
Vinny and Julie had a slide in last week's presentation that outlined where we would lose the state funding. So we can revive that because it says specifically.
So I think, like really easily, school is funded by both taxes and state aid. The state aid is disappearing.
Exactly.
And we're not the only school district who's going through this.
Right.
Across the state, all school districts are going through this. And it's a big issue. And unfortunately, because our situation, for some reason, we have been hit the worst, our school district has.
Some towns are saying, hey, we get it. The schools are having a problem. We'll help you out. We'll provide more funding, but that's not what's going on here. I'm also not sure that's what would pass here, but there are other districts where the hurt is being shared, because even though the towns do get state aid, the percent of their budget that comes from state aid is much smaller than the percent of our budget. On the other hand, our budget, the revenues come mostly from the town and is guaranteed, whereas their revenues come from taxpayers, excise tax, and a little bit from permitting. So excise tax, not guaranteed. People don't buy cars, they don't get that revenue. If people decide not to pay their tax bill, they don't get their revenue. I don't know I don't think they're going to get the excise tax that they did before. People who didn't buy cars in January maybe are going to buy cars, but the people who it won't be a 1-for-1 necessarily. So I think
the reason why your property taxes didn't go down is because the majority of both town services and school services are supported by your residential property taxes. There is no commercial tax base to offset or to contribute to that revenue source, right? So other bigger towns and communities and cities, they have a very diversified revenue source, can weather the impact a little better than we can. Right. So your property taxes. So again, Wyndham is in an override for townside services because the revenue received from property taxes also cannot support the existing town operating budget.
Right.
So there's a bigger economic. I don't know if you want to go down this road, but there's a bigger sort of economic lesson here about diversifying your towns so that you're not 95% reliant on property taxes to support all your town services, including school districts and school district needs.
Yeah. Most people in this survey are concerned about us cutting and how are we possibly going to operate in the fall with having had these cuts. And I think everyone agrees that we have no idea how we're going to be operating in the fall. There's going to be some guidance coming out sometime in the next week or so, but that's not even
I think
That's
the more
not even
general,
going to say that we're into phase 3 and everybody can go back to school yet. Like, we don't even know when that's going to happen.
Jesse gave such loose guidelines in the very beginning of all this going on. So you kind of have to kind of make it up as you go. And it's been a real issue. And this is, we can't foresee what's going to happen in fall. I think what we have to do is do what, we've been asked to, the state funding being reduction and go from there.
I think I'd be very nervous about getting too far into the weeds with this, right? Because we all know this is a rabbit hole, right? Because, you start getting into what the fall is going to look like. Again, we don't even know who's going to be comfortable letting their kids back to school. Yeah, we don't even know what our numbers are going to look like student-wise, right? And then the chances of there being more remote learning next year could be pretty good, right? That's a bet I'd take. So it's like, how far, what should our messaging be, really concerned with? And again, there's always room for sort of answering deeper questions on a personal level. But, from a messaging standpoint, what is the sort of clearest, catchphraseist type of messaging we want to be sending out there? I think we need to tell people who's there, what we need.
about what issue? I mean, there's more than one issue going on, right? I mean, the first primary thing is, to answer the question is why are we cutting $1.2 million, right? That was one question we try to answer. Second question, is what is school going to look like next year? Well, I don't know. I don't think anybody does, but as we heard from Mary Beth and we heard from Julie more than once, we're waiting for guidance from DESE, right? We're going to follow to the extent possible what their guidelines will be. We're going to do our utmost effort to preserve the integrity of the classroom experience, or the educational experience. Forget about the classroom experience, but the educational experience for all of our students. I mean, I don't want to get into the rabbit hole either, but we need to be able to sort of say what our intent is, right? Our intent was not just to find $1.2 million to cut to appease the Board of Selectmen and the FinComs. It was a response to anticipated state cut in revenue. And our intent is to preserve the academic excellence of the district and to maintain the educational quality and the experience for all the kids, all the students.
I think too, stressing the 3 questions that Julie has poised to all of us, keeping in mind, you're saying the integrity of the classroom, preserving that high quality education. And the third one was, anyone help me out here? No?
What about children going to need when they return to school?
Yeah.
Can I just say, last week there was a lot of discussion about a bus fee, charging a bus fee. And there's controversy about that as to whether or not that's even legal. It does appear, because the state law says that you shall provide busing for children, whatever it is, I think it's 1.5 miles or something like that. And then you could charge for others, but that's the state law. But then the regulation says that you must provide transportation. So there's sort of like a little bit of a gray area. Somebody said that Manchester Essex is charging a fee. I did contact their school committee member who has requested that information from their business manager, but I don't have that back. I did check with Triton. They do not charge because they are of the belief that it is illegal. And I have heard in the past that if you charge a bus fee, you cannot collect the regional transportation money. which is a fairly significant amount of dollars. So you would, not only would you have to collect the fee, but you would have to collect the fee to make up the money that the state would have given you. So it's just that's not a workable solution to the problem that we're in right now. Mostly because we're a regional district. If we were not a regional district, we could just cancel the buses and everybody could drive their own children. But not a good solution to the problem either. So.
Yeah, you're right, Michelle. And under section 16C, talking about regional school districts and school transportation, we could charge people, if they want to take the bus, that live 1.5 miles or less, but not everybody else. I mean, if that comes down to it, because they do say that there's some leeway that you can pick them up if it's part of the bus route.
But we don't go out of our way to pick those kids up anyway. Like, it's not like there's a bus stop within 1 mile of the high school or whatever, 2 miles of the high school. So.
Well, we already have a policy around transportation.
Right.
It's distance, the minimum distance.
Can we start our talking points off with the 3 questions or the 3 beliefs that we have about this COVID-19 pandemic that Julie talked about? Those are our 3 talking points, right? Or the 3. Can we start off with that rather? Yes, no?
Do you have them? Can you repeat them
David.
again?
It's in one of the slides. I mean, we could really just pull the slides that Julie used and Vinny used.
Do you have the slides on the device that you're connected to Zoom with right now, Michelle?
I don't. It's on my iPad, unfortunately. Okay. But let me try and find it. It was in last week's agenda.
I have it pulled up here. I'm just
on the
waiting.
same device that you're connected to, Peter?
No, but I could. It would just take a second.
Because we could put it on the screen.
Guiding questions through the process. Is that the one we're talking about?
Yes.
What staff supports will our students need most as we navigate the COVID-19 crisis and return to school? How can we protect and preserve the classroom? What resources might have the most direct impact on students' emotional, physical, mental, and academic well-being? And how will we keep equity at the forefront of each decision? Are those the questions?
That's way too heavy. It's way too heavy for a point.
I was just reading them verbatim, and we can.
No,
we can.
Can you read the first one again, Peter?
What staffing supports will our students need most as we navigate the COVID-19 crisis and return to school in the fall?
Great.
What
Quality teachers, 2.
What's that?
Quality teachers, 2. What's number 2?
How can we protect and preserve the classroom?
It may not be a classroom.
Right.
I mean, that's why I said earlier, it's really an educational experience.
Right. How can we protect and preserve the education of the students, I guess? What resources have the most direct impact on the students?
That's it, Peter. You said it. Say it again. How can we protect the what? Educational what?
How can we protect and preserve the education of our students?
Educational experience of our students.
Experience.
Hey, approve a budget now that meets the needs of the district, given that there had to be a reduction due to a loss of state aid. Flip the ballot, fill in the bubbles, and go to the meeting.
Yes. Go to the meeting, vote. Vote at the meeting. Vote at the meeting.
So the last question is, how will we keep equity at the forefront of each decision?
Right.
I don't know. Is that part of it or no? Just stop with the first 2?
It's too heady.
Yeah.
It's too.
I don't think most people will understand what that question even means.
Okay. So taking those first 2 questions and making them our bullet points, right? Our main points.
And then answering what staffing supports will our students need most.
So how are we going to communicate this? Or what are we just going to put it on our website? Are we going to mail something? Are we going to create a graphic and everybody's going to put it on their Facebook page when they get back on Facebook?
Can the friends help?
Can we email using our school we're not telling people how to vote, but can we use our school email if we have some type of slide and just send it to all of our contacts? We're not
Well, you
telling them how to
can't
vote.
tell them how to vote.
Right, but if we're just saying
They
these are the
vote.
bullet points, yeah.
I'm going to tell you,
Well, we-
I sent
yeah.
a bunch of emails using my personal account this weekend.
Mhm.
Michelle, I might be
And
able
they
to help
basically
clear.
said, what about it, fill it out.
Michelle, generally the guidelines around that is that you can share information regarding budget decisions. So the information that people need, you just can't advocate for a vote one way or the other.
But wouldn't we be advocating for a vote if we answer the question, what staffing supports will our students need? How can we protect and preserve the educational experience of our kids? And we answer them. Aren't we kind of telling them how to vote? I don't know.
We don't know what cuts yet. So you can't tell them that. And it's more of a scare tactic if you say all this stuff's going to be cut. You need to guide, tell them facts, not this is what, because we haven't, made those decisions yet.
Yeah, you can say the school committee has voted a budget that has, takes into consideration reduced revenues from the state that we believe will best meet the needs of our students in the fall. And the time to vote is at the town meeting and at the ballot. Questions that relate to the school in Wyndham are questions, I think it's 3 and 4, I think. And we'd have to look at the Hamilton ballot. The questions on the ballot that relate to the school are question, whatever it is. And so they know. They also need to know that there's questions on the back of the ballot. I think that's going to be key. People have to know that the questions are on the back of the ballot.
You had a catchphrase. What was it?
Flip and fill.
Flip and fill.
But is Hamilton have 2 sides too? That's, that gets confusing because we know about Wyndham has 2 sides ballot, but do we know about Hamilton? Is it 1 or 2 sides?
1 page.
It's 1 page?
Mm-hmm.
So we've got to have like 2 conversations.
The only question on
one
Hamilton
for Hamilton and one for Wyndham.
The only question on Hamilton is the capital budget.
Right, because they're putting their capital questions off to the fall, I think.
So are we going to come to a consensus on how to get this word out, or is it just we're going to do it as a committee or just do it individually?
So can we go to communicating first with the town officials? I think we need to communicate to Hamilton that we have voted to reduce a budget and that we would respectfully request that for the efficiency of town meeting, that they put those 2 warrants together. They're going to tell you they can't do that because it's been printed, blah, 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 in the ballot, blah, whatever, but we can still ask. They're going to tell you they printed the warrants and they can't do that, but we should still let them know that that is our ask. And it would be an intention that we would make a motion to that effect. And that we would write a letter. Do we want to do that?
That, or do we speak at their next selectmen meeting? Both?
I think go to the next selectmen meeting to make a better communication.
What was that,
Yeah.
Stacey?
Yeah,
It
no,
should
I
be in
think we
writing.
should write all.
Okay, so who do we want to put in charge of writing and sending the letter? Or are we going to wordsmith a letter now?
I'd say let's wordsmith the letter now. Just get it done.
Who's gonna type?
I guess I'm secretary, so I will. So let me just give me a second here. And I may have
So
to yell
what-
at my 17-year-old, so just bear with me.
Before we
everybody.
start this letter, people are asking, I've gotten some text, where are these cuts coming from? What exactly is being cut for this 1.274 million?
It's,
And so that's what people want to know. If they're voting this, what's being cut?
we will make those decisions next week. We don't have a choice. If you don't get the money, you can't spend it. So if we're not gonna get it, we can't spend it. We don't have a choice. We could decide, I mean, if we can find other ways to cut costs, which we might, if we don't go back to the buildings, we won't have to provide busing. We would save money. However, there may be additional costs.
Someone had asked about the cost of food. Didn't Vinny say that's a wash? That if we don't, because we make.
It's a
we
profit
take
center.
We
Yeah,
take
it's
it,
supposed to pay for
selling
itself.
lunch, it pays for
Mhm.
itself.
It's supposed to pay for itself.
Yeah, so there's no saving.
It usually pays for itself, yeah.
Right.
Sometimes we have to pay some money to cover the cost of insurance.
I just wanted to put that out there for the folks who are wondering about
But if
that.
there was no school and there was no sports, we would save money because we wouldn't have to care for the fields. We wouldn't have to rent the fields. We wouldn't have to pay the referees. We wouldn't have to pay the coaches. I mean, there's a lot of, on the other hand, there could be other expenses that we would have to,
I don't know if
No.
there's a way to really go down into details about what's being cut.
well,
Also,
Well, and
Well,
so
next
I mean,
week-
but the other thing is, right, so think about what people are really asking, right? Because they're like, oh, what's going to be cut? What's going to be cut? What's going to be cut? They're scared that we're going to be cutting art, we're going to be cutting music, right? So that's what they're asking us, I think, in saying that, right? So that's sort of the rabbit hole we don't want to get into, but at the same time, we can't, we're not in a position to promise anything yet. We're still in negotiations with so many factors to even see what that number really is. I see that Dr. Kuchenberger's actually hopped onto the call.
is she an attendee?
So
No, she's here.
Oh, she's under my pop-up thing. Okay.
I'm trying to get on. Sorry, just joining the
So,
conversation. late.
well, I think we owe you an apology, Julie, in sort of getting a little aggressive and maybe perhaps ahead of ourselves in voting a new budget to try and move the towns into creating town meetings to even talk about it. And without you actually here, we felt confident enough in giving the number with that 20% that we've been talking about for weeks, but without you or Vinny sort of in attendance at the meeting, might have been sort of a little bit premature in that sense. So I'm happy
Yeah,
that you're here
so-
now.
David, and I understand that the inevitable is the inevitable, but my primary concern is that communication matters and process
Mhm.
matters. And I honestly am shocked, I have to say, and taken aback, because I literally said to the leadership team this morning, like, oh, they're just working on their talking points. I won't be able to be there. Vinny's on a much earned vacation, blah, blah, blah. And so I worry about the credibility and how that'll play out, because we have
Yep.
really hard decisions to make over the next few months. And I have no idea how the conversation went prior to this. I was in a different meeting, and I'm just going to put that out there. And I'm not trying to come in and like Monday morning quarterback or anything like that. But I just want to say that in these tenuous times, the way we communicate and how we communicate is going to be so important, because there's going to be so many things that are outside of our control. but we have to care for our staff in a way that's really thoughtful and empathetic. And I'm not suggesting that you weren't, because again, I wasn't in the meeting, but if I knew we were making this decision today, I would have sent a communication out to staff that was very much a heads up, and you would have had hundreds of people on this call, much like we did last week. With all that being said, I also understand the pressure you're feeling from the Board of Selectmen. And at the same time, I say, you know, at the end of the day, remember our core values. Remember why we're here. We're here to do what's best and right for kids. And so that means that someone else's timeline, if it doesn't fit our thoughtful decision-making processes, then, you know, we can acknowledge it and we can be thoughtful and we can be compassionate about it. But at the end of the day, we have one obligation, and that is to serve our students to the best of our ability. And I don't feel really ready to communicate what this reduction means or looks like. And I think that's what the staff, or that's not just what the staff, but that's what the whole community is going to be looking for. They're going to want to know, what does this mean? And we don't have those answers yet, because we're trying to be so creative and so innovative and so thoughtful about how we get to what we know is inevitable. But at the same time, there's multiple pathways there. So sorry to like come in and interject my thoughts, but I was just thinking of panic when I saw
No, and I'm like, again, I'm really happy that you did, because, you know, like I said, I think that when you watch, you'll see that we definitely tried to sort of tiptoe around the specifics as best we could, with giving the FinComs and the Board of Selectmen sort of the number they were pretending they didn't already know, officially, so they can stop saying that, you know, they don't know, you know, what we're coming from, even though we've been try to be as transparent as possible over the past 11 weeks or so. And you know, I mean, but you brought up a really good point, and and it's just something for us to keep in mind, in the future, how, even though we're sort of looking through things at one lens, that the last thing we want to do is sort of create a panic or a stir with our leadership team and our teachers. Again, at the end of the day, that this is devastating to sort of to all of us, to try and figure out how to get through these times, knowing where we wanted our budget to be, and bringing more people in to create more robust education here in Hamilton Wyndham, and then sort of being forced with these shortcomings from the state, that perhaps we weren't, we hadn't thought about the effect that it might take on our teachers and staff, and definitely want to apologize again for that. So that being said, we are still in the middle of trying to figure out how we best, to piggyback on you, how we best communicate to everybody, like how much is too much information, what's the right amount of information that we want to be getting out to people, and what does it mean, how far into the rabbit hole do we really want to try and get in explaining everything. So that's sort of where you just jumped in our conversation. Okay.
Well, I don't know if you're looking for me to add to the conversation, but again, not knowing what was already said, I would hate to waste people's time and be redundant. But I think the most important thing we can say is that we have more unknowns than knowns in this moment. And so the most important thing is for us to develop a budget that's going to allow us to be agile and flexible, because circumstances are going to change over it. I mean, I'm waiting for, like, in my mind, I have June 8th. Like, let's see how the first 3 weeks of reopening went in Massachusetts. And then what's 3 weeks after that? And then what's 3 weeks after that? And we're going to continue to evolve our thinking as this goes. I will say that the leadership team in Hamilton Wenham has been doing extensive research, not only about what's happening across our country, but what's happening across the globe and how different countries are responding to reentry. And we've just begun that process. Our plan next week is to communicate with you kind of where we are with that. At the same time, we're trying to like chunk this, because if you start to think about everything that we have to think about as teachers and paras and, teaching assistants and principals and central office leaders, it's really overwhelming really quickly. But like right now, our goal is to think about how do we get people back into the buildings by June 1 to just pack up classrooms and do that sort of routine stuff. And then we'll continue it to evolve over time. So I think we have to continue to keep in balance, the technical stuff, like the budget. It's very technical, right? It's numbers. It's like, what will we have access to? What will we need? But then there's this whole adaptive side, which is like, how are people feeling? What are the social emotional needs of our staff and our students? And how are we addressing that? And so that's the delicate balance that we're going to be in throughout this. And if we get too far to one side or the other, we're going to lose sight of how we really create a successful year for our kids next, whatever school will look like next year. So just sort of adding that as food for thought to this, but making sure that when we're ready to make decisions, we're communicating that really clearly, like we're about to make this decision. So those who need to be engaged or want to be engaged in that process can be. And again, not trying to project my own feelings on the situation, but I feel like this was like a massive curveball I was not anticipating for tonight at all.
No, I mean, I like that what you said at the beginning about this creating an agile environment, to accommodate the known unknowns. Sort of what I wrote, just as paraphrasing. I think that sort of definitely helps with our overall messaging. Especially where, one of the things we're talking about is, people asking, for specifics, and it's, you don't want to be giving any specifics. One to sort of, you want to respect the complexity of the conversation, and two, that things are changing on a almost daily basis, that, it's really hard to sort of pin anything down. So just the term, just creating that agile environment, I think is really something that we should add into our language, messaging out, because I just think it's a nice, concise term.
My fear is that we don't work with the towns, and the budgets fail, and we're stuck with a 1/12 budget, and then we are well beyond the 1.3 million cuts. So I hear what you're saying, Julie, but I think we needed to make a decision to tell the towns this is where we have to go, and we're going there. And you know me, I hear about the keeping everybody safe and the teachers and having a plan and everything, but the alternative is if the towns run with this, then we're in a 1/12 budget, which is 12 steps back from where we want to be, 100 steps back where we want to be. So, well, I hear what you're saying, but I think I don't know. I just feel like we need to move forward with the towns. Sorry.
No, I'm like so like passionate right now. I'm just interrupting, and I apologize for that. So let's frame this, okay? The towns are deciding to have a town meeting, or at least Hamilton has already decided to have a town meeting on June 12th, correct?
20th.
June 20th.
I'm sorry, June 20th. Okay, so that's a fact, right? We know that they're working towards that. We don't actually know it's a fact. They're working towards that. We don't know yet what Wyndham's plan is, right? That's a fact. What we do know is that we are going to have unexpected costs and unanticipated student needs beyond what we have even previously thought about in our current budget. But yet we're trying to do our job and being proactive and being responsible and reducing our budget based on a projected 20% reduction in local state aid. Like, these are the facts. And we can be as helpful and as thoughtful along the way, preparing for a town meeting. Let's assume that Wyndham will also have a town meeting on June 20th, but we don't know that yet. The one thing that is in our realm of control and that is in our realm of responsibility is taking care of our staff and taking care of our kids. That's our job as a school committee, right? And as much as we want to be helpful and we want to give the Board of Selectmen the information that they need, that's not our ultimate responsibility. Our ultimate responsibility is to our kids and is to our staff. And so making these decisions has to be really thoughtful and methodical and strategic and planful. And we've done that all along the way. We've started this back in July when we found out we were having a projected deficit. And so now to like all of a sudden disrupt that feels really chaotic to me. And I'm just speaking for myself personally. And I'm feeling like I have instantly failed our community at communicating well with them about where we are and what we're doing. And we've been trying to be really thoughtful about that along the way. And so I understand the Board of Selectmen want to know what we plan to reduce. We plan to reduce our revenue by 1.274. We've been really clear about that. What exactly that means in terms of positions or programs or that requires thoughtful analysis. And we're working on that. And we're being really thoughtful about that. And if we can get concessions from our collective bargaining groups, and if we can get concessions from our non-collective bargaining groups, that changes what that looks like. The one thing we can tell them today is that we're planning for a 20% reduction in state aid, right? But to like push ourselves beyond that, I think is being unfair to our kids and unfair to our staff.
So Julie, I just wanted to stop you for a second, just to assure you that that is precisely the conversation we had earlier tonight, saying, exactly what you just said, that, this is the number, the 1.27, and how we're get there, where, we don't know yet, that we were just putting in that's the number we're working with, so that they, again, couldn't say that they didn't know what number we're working with. So I just wanted to reassure you there that
I appreciate that. And honestly, it would be irresponsible for us to be communicating that it was going to adjust the assessments to either town in a different way.
So, and again, that, as a board, I think we all felt, and that's how the conversation went earlier, that's what we've been saying clearly all along. Mm-hmm. But, we're hearing back from the other boards or, certain members of the boards that they don't know what number we're talking about, when we're like, no, we've been we've been very clear all along on, what the reduction looks like, what that reduction number is from state aid, and, that our assessment to the towns were going to stay, as is. And, the game playing of saying that they didn't know what our budget was, we're out of time to be playing that game anymore.
Yeah, and this kind of goes back to what Michelle Bailey had suggested. I don't know if it was last meeting or the meeting before that, like, do we just reduce our revenue by 1.274 million in anticipation that that's conservative enough and that it's, it's the sweet spot, and move forward with our budget in that way? And that gives your incoming superintendent and leadership team the opportunity to then be really strategic about where do the reductions actually happen. Because what I think the reductions might be today, obviously in consult with the leadership team, might be really different than what they are in August. And if we're really not going to have a state budget until the fall, then it kind of feels a little irresponsible and reckless for us to be making decisions about what those reductions are right now. with all that being said, I still understand there's timelines, and, personnel deserves the right to know sooner than later so that they can make life decisions. But I think that's also pretty clear, where you stand in terms of non-professional status or seniority. And, my recommendation unsolicited would be, if you think you're vulnerable, you should look for other positions, which isn't the best for the district, but it's right for the person.
So Julie, most of the discussion, nothing specific was discussed about specific cuts based on, using your list from last week.
Mm-hmm.
The discussion really centered on the overall budget number, recognizing that the 1.2 in less state revenue needs to be acknowledged.
Right.
So that's what we landed with, is just, I would have thought, I think everybody would have thought it'd be completely premature to have the discussion about any specifics when I don't think it's entirely appropriate for the school committee to be doing that. But I also think I don't think anybody here felt comfortable doing that, even having heard it from just 1 week ago and not having you or Vinny in attendance. So.
Yeah. Well, I'm happy to hear that, Jean, and I'm sorry if I overreacted, but I'm just so protective of our people because I know they're our most valuable resource, and I know how much they mean to our families and our staff. And I don't want to happen what happened last week, where we put things out there that were considerations, and then it got that was heartbreaking to see kids so stressed that they thought things that matter most to them were on the quote unquote chopping block, because we're working so hard to avoid that. So I just want to make sure that the community knows that. At the same time, we do need to be prepared. I don't think we want to be caught on our heels. And so I commend you for taking a proactive approach and being cognizant of it's pretty clear we're not going to have the same amount of revenue, unless there's some sort of federal action that tells us something different than we've been hearing for the last month. But I'm not getting any indication of that. And I've been listening to a lot of conversations about this. So I do think it's savvy. I do think it's prudent. I do think it's a way to move forward, so long as everyone in the community knows that we're going to continue to be flexible and agile and responsive to what we know when we know. And a lot of these decisions about what are the actual reductions will likely happen after I'm no longer here. And so I've expressed my opinions. You all know how I feel. The incoming superintendent, Mary Beth Banyos, has been very involved. She's joining leadership team meetings. And I just want the community to know that I want them to have confidence in the leadership team and their expertise and their decision-making capabilities as we work through that. If you're deciding tonight to make that reduction, nothing's set in stone, and we need to be really flexible as we go.
Well, Julie, one thing I understand is really, the stress among a lot of people. I mean, not only families, but, in our school district, the word got out and saw all the cuts. And so then the teachers went out to students, teachers, whatnot, basically the word out.
Which, by the way, was an inappropriate use of their school email. So let's not forget that was an inappropriate use of school email.
Well, anyways, so the word is out that, 23 people, and even Peter keeps saying, 23 people are going to be cut. And maybe, those, we should have done tier 2 or tier 3, but saying these are the cuts we're looking at to go within the 20% less state funding. And that's what we're looking at, as opposed to showing tier 2 and tier 3. That's my personal feeling, that we shouldn't have had all that. And that really caused pandemonium.
But people do need to know, if they are voting no, there have to be additional cuts made. And we cannot make them to English, social studies, science, math. It has to come from other places. We can't not have,
Right?
So
We
listen,
have
Third
some
grade, we
graduates.
can't say, okay, we're gonna cut third grade because we don't have any money.
right. I think though that it's tonight, we had not discussed specific cuts, but I do think it's important to communicate with some transparency, which we have been, which is, with the situation, there are going to be cuts potentially. And I think that it's important to be transparent about that. I have not sensed that we're talking about specific positions or programs.
Well, the programs were in tier 3 of possible cuts. It was on Julie's letter and the Google
but-
Doc.
So we're getting way off base
Failed
here.
budget.
We're getting way off base here, guys. So I just want to sort of circle back,
So
right?
we were working on a letter to the Board of Selectmen,
Mm-hmm.
asking them to please consider putting our budget back as one vote. Is that something we still want to do?
Yes.
Great. So, dear Board of Selectmen,
Mhm,
the
Oh, I like
Hamilton Wenham Regional School Committee respectfully requests.
mhm. That.
Are you
that-
typing?
Yeah. That the Hamilton Board of redundant, that you as a board,
You as a
that
board
you as a board,
allow the school committee's budget to be voted as one article.
to be voted as one article. Yep. Sincerely,
Sincerely, us. Like,
us.
I mean, do we?
Yes,
Well,
we'll
I
sign.
mean, do
Each
we
of us
put
will
in?
sign.
Do we put in that we intend to make a motion on the floor of town meeting?
No, I wouldn't do that. I would just say we respectfully request that the two warrants be combined into one.
Should we explain why?
For the
know why.
for the efficient operation of the meeting. And because,
The second warrant is an arbitrary number that has no meaning.
well, and you could also say that a no vote on one article is the same as a no vote on
All of it.
any of two articles.
Yeah.
There's no different results. The results are not different.
And it would avoid voter confusion.
It would avoid voter confusion.
Or minimize. Help reduce.
Okay.
Eliminate.
How about this? Just we can rework it. The Hamilton Regional School Committee respectfully requests that you, as a board, vote to move the two warrants to one. We feel that the move will allow for efficiencies and avoid voter confusion.
I think it should be two budget warrants to one.
Two budget warrants.
Yep, sounds good.
I would say combine them into one. And I would say efficiencies at the town meeting.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to add something that says the perception of having two separate warrants alludes to the fact that like some things are optional, but yet we are only advocating for our operational budget?
No, because they believe that they are.
I mean, it's not like we're saying like, hey, if you also vote on the second warrant, we can have leaf pickup. But like, we're not saying that. We're saying like, we're going to educate all kids and we need this money to do it.
No, I think Michelle's right. I think there's certain members of the FinComs of the board, the selectmen, who think that the second warrant is a nice to have.
That's my worry. I don't want the public to think that, because that's not accurate.
Okay.
Well, we'll have to say that. We'll have to say that, the number was just an arbitrary number, and that if you vote no on either one of these, it's the same as voting no on the whole thing. And pack your bags because we're coming back to another meeting.
Right. Yeah, it's not like, oh, if you don't vote for warrant 2, you don't get the 7th kindergarten teacher. It's
Right.
no, like if you don't vote for warrant 2, there's a whole host of things that won't be able to happen.
Okay. How about this? How about add to the letter? The second warrant, don't write this down yet. The second warrant does not include, the second warrant includes necessary expenses to maintain the integrity of the school district operations and to educate all students.
And then we should put something on there that we thank them for holding a town meeting before the end of June to allow us to have the opportunity to finalize the budget in advance of the fiscal year.
Yeah, prior to June 30.
Yep, like that is super awesome. And that when Peter and Phil are done with their fundraising and we have the bond passed, we'll have a big party at the place where they held their meeting to celebrate. Leave that part out, because who knows when that will be. Soon, hopefully.
All right. We, the Hamilton Regional School Committee, respectfully request that you, as a board, move to vote the 2 budget warrants to 1. The move will allow efficiencies at town meeting and avoid voter confusion. The second warrant does not include necessary expenses. This is to include the
unnecessary, or
does not include unnecessary expenses. And this doesn't sound right.
I wouldn't use the negative. I would say that the second warrant includes necessary expense items or necessary expenses
includes
to maintain the integrity of the district operations.
Yep.
Good,
to educate all students in the district.
It could even say in Hamilton, because this is just Hamilton, right?
Well,
I would do the district.
I would do
Okay.
We're educating all kids, not just Hamilton.
Yep.
We'll educate the Wyndham ones too.
Maybe.
Only if they pay
More, yeah.
We'll say. We'll say.
The students of the district.
Move to Hamilton.
It's hard to teach.
Move to Hamilton. Come to the side.
The good side. The second warrant includes necessary expenses to maintain the integrity of the school budget to educate the students of the district to the highest level.
Don't
No.
know. District done.
District, period. Okay.
Unless
Thank
you're
you.
gonna put to the quality expected by the community.
I don't mean to be all touchy-feely, but what if we say of our community?
Right.
Of our community. Okay, touchy-feely. Of.
Don't like it. Hit them hard, hit them low, hit them anytime.
Thank you for moving. Thank you. Okay, last sentence. Thank you for moving forward with a town meeting which allows the budget to pass before June 30th, 2020. I didn't really hear what you guys were saying. Who's going to massage that one?
Thank you for holding a town meeting before June 30th.
Okay.
From somebody who has my phone number, but who I have no idea who they are.
I can tell you
that we use the word article instead of warrant.
Thank you, my friend.
I have no idea who this is.
I'll tell you later. I got the same one.
It's you correcting yourself.
Budget article.
Future you.
Using word article and saying word article. 2 articles to 1. Okay, I'm going to forward this to everybody. And then I think we can do a DocuSign maybe, right?
Do we have to sign it, or can we?
I think you could just type everyone's name and send it.
Okay.
We could type the names and yeah.
Okay.
And
are we still going to plan on someone speaking at their meeting on next week?
Yes, it was actually suggested that either Julie or Mary Beth or Vinny or David attend, and I would say possibly more people.
I have to remember it's Tuesday.
I think it's Monday.
Monday? See, yeah,
but it's not this month. I think they're meeting on the like, I don't know why the 8th is sticking out, but I'll get the date.
Let me look. I'll look.
It's a Monday, whatever it is.
I'm happy to attend any meeting, but at some point people are going to be tired of hearing what I have to say. So whether it's the 1st or the 8th, those are both Mondays.
Okay.
It's not
But
posted.
I'm happy to be there.
I'll be there too.
Okay. So we'll just have to keep an eye out.
Yeah. it's
Jay
not posted
Burnham
yet.
sends out an email every Saturday morning with all of the meetings listed. So when I see it, I'll be happy to share that.
Okay. I'll do my best to attend. This is hard. We're
So
going
would we like to write a letter to Wyndham requesting that they have a meeting
Yeah.
scheduled?
Okay,
So-
hold on.
Is there
I
reason
think
to
they're
not, if the reason not to hold one was based on the lack of information they thought they didn't have about our budget? Well, we
Well,
kind
I
of
think
got
that
one for them then.
put that right in the
Some of the reason. Not sure if it's all of the reason.
But I mean, I think that we just write them a letter requesting, you know, and then mentioning that and
Vinny and I can
again,
also
putting it back in theirs.
Vinny and I can also very quickly prepare documents that support a 1.274 reduction in revenue. And then
No, we know Vinny can. 'Cause he can write stuff up on vacation very quickly also.
but not until he's off vacation. And then we can also, it's mostly personnel. So, in terms of the DESI voter categories or whatever information they might require, we can prepare that fairly easy without getting into specifics. I just want to make sure that we're creating enough flexibility. Hold on one second, boo-boo. That we're creating enough flexibility for us to be able to respond to any guidance that we might get, which today I learned we're not going to be really getting any guidance outside of what PPE is going to be required from the state in terms of schools reopening until the middle of June. And I think that's a little too late for our voters to feel informed and prepared. So we need to be able to make sure we're creating enough flexibility in our budget reductions to respond to whatever our new context is going to be. Oh, did you hear any of that? I was just saying.
No,
I was
we
on mute that whole
totally
time.
did.
Thank you.
Okay.
And we had also shared that you had told us that, it could be as much as, close to $500,000 in cost for our district to provide those personal protective devices. So.
Yes, we costed it out, and we were looking at if we had to provide PPE for every student, every staff, every day, which we don't expect that, right? It's going to be like, just like you buy a new backpack, now you buy multiple masks. I ordered some myself today that are washable.
I did too.
But we're trying to be as proactive as we can. We're trying to order before everyone else in the country tries to order, so we don't end up in the situation that we saw happening with the one thing we have learned is that it is going to be a local responsibility to purchase those things and procure those things. The benefit that we have is having a director of facilities maintenance and operations that's really proactive, already priced it all out. Multiple superintendents asked me today, like, what are you projecting for this? And I was able to share with them directly because Tom has been really specific about all those things. So I think we're in a good place in terms of those things, but there's just going to be so many unpredictable aspects to whatever school looks like moving forward.
So, dear Board of Selectmen, Hamilton Wyndham Regional School Committee respectfully requests that a town meeting be scheduled
June 20th.
prior to June 20th. to allow the residents to vote on the proposed school assessment.
So not to complicate thinking, and maybe they've talked about this, but if we're going on the 3-week cycle, June 8th will be the next time that we hear from the governor, likely, about how we did in the first phase. And then 3 weeks later will be June 29th. So is it best to say prior to June 30th, just to kind of give that flexibility?
We could also say prior to July 4th or July
Or no.
4th or
No,
say that again, Julie. Dr. Kuchenberger.
Did the governor allow municipalities to go beyond June 30 without a approved budget?
They have the 1/12 option,
Okay.
which, is still not,
So how does their 1/12 budget affect us?
well, they have to pay their assessment to us. And the 1/12,
The 1/12 portion? Okay.
but we don't know. I've heard talk that it's not really truly 1/12, it's 1/12 plus. So it's 12 plus maybe something
contractual obligations.
contractual, but they have to pay us our 1/12 portion.
Got it. Okay.
And I have not seen that in writing, and I've been looking for it. So
Yeah. And I think what Jay Sullivan one time alluded to, they would consider, but he didn't really say.
And we have a meeting this Friday, a Zoom call or whatever, a virtual call this Friday, specific to regional school districts. So we might have more information then.
Okay, so what date do we want to put on the letter? Do we want June 30th?
I say before June 30.
Before June 30th. We are committed to providing you with all the information you need to feel confident. I don't know. All the information that voters need to be informed when they vote. We're happy to attend a meeting. If you would like us, please let us know. Something like that. Hi, Michelle.
The Hamilton Wyndham Regional School Committee I'm having a hard time with this, respectfully requests that a town meeting be scheduled prior to June 30th, 2020 to allow the residents of Wyndham to vote on the proposed assessments of the town. We are committed to providing you with all the information the citizens of Wyndham will need to make an informed vote on the articles. Thank you in advance for your consideration.
Do we want to offer any possibility of a joint meeting prior to, or no?
We've already tried that with the legislative meeting, and that didn't go anywhere, right? But that's just my thought.
I mean, I'm with you. But I understand where you're coming from, right? We're trying to work together. But at some point we just have to realize they don't want to work together, and this is how it is.
That's not. I don't think you can make those generalizations. There's plenty of people who want to work together. We just have to find out who they are, reach out, and grab their hands.
But I mean, if the decision maker, if the people who are, scheduling the meetings cancel the meetings,
Right.
what are we going to do?
You talk to them and you find out why, and you try and overcome their objections, and you ask them if you would like us to attend one of their meetings.
So, but I mean, at what point do we stop being the kick dog here and, keep trying to go back and saying, hey, we'll meet you, we'll meet you, and then
They have all the power.
do they?
They have the authority to decide when we have the meeting. I mean, we have the power of political power to, have people persuade them, but ultimately they get to decide.
So, I mean, I think these decisions are more than unilateral decisions. And I think that has to be, people need to be reminded of that.
Legislature gave them the authority. And they gave the moderator the authority to postpone the meeting for 30 days. So, I mean, it's better to try and work with people instead of working against or discounting their cooperation.
Oh.
They're not the easiest bunch to work with, but we can, if we don't try, we won't get anything.
I mean, I feel like we tried over the weekend, Michelle, you specifically.
Right? I think we can attend their meeting.
No, not if they don't have one.
Well, they will. Eventually they have to meet. Eventually they have to meet. There will be some issue. And they did say they will meet next week. They're people of their word, generally.
All right, so do we want to actually add the language that we're willing to meet?
Yeah, we're willing to come to your meeting at your invitation or something like that.
Sure. I mean, that's really putting the ball in their court.
I know they appreciated when Vinny came to get the letter for the 1/12 budget that we have to submit to the DESE by June 1st. They also made a request that we recount all the children, which he was going to look into, see if we could do.
They think we're missing kids.
They think we might not be able to count, that the computer might not be able to count if they're in Wyndham or Hamilton, but.
No, we collect that data really consistently. We had a request from Hamilton as well.
Yeah.
And we'll get that to them.
Yep.
But yeah, that's daily data we collect.
Right. And you give us that annoying, whatever budget, that annoying enrollment report every month that I told you is unnecessary, but apparently the selection is to get that.
I think I was reflecting on that today as I was looking at next week's meeting and thinking maybe I need to be more specific and break it down by town.
Maybe. Who knew the genius you held?
All right. Dear Wyndham Board of Selectmen, the Hamilton Wyndham Regional School Committee respectfully requests that a town meeting be scheduled prior to June 30th, 2020 to allow the residents of Wyndham to vote on the proposed assessment to the town. We are committed to providing the board with the necessary information to enable the citizens to make an informed decision when voting on the articles. We are willing to attend your next meeting at your invitation. Thank you in advance for your consideration, and we look forward to hearing from you. Respectfully submitted.
Do you want to say we're going to crash your next meeting no matter what?
No, we're not going to say that.
Well, you said attend the next meeting. Anybody can attend, but should we say participate or
that would be the invitation part. That would be the invitation part.
The speaking part.
Yeah.
Okay. Citizens comment period.
It will.
We could speak in their citizens comment period.
Right.
Okay. I'm going to put both of these to everybody for grammatical checks, please, because I'm old and I don't remember much. So,
And
so be on the lookout for that,
who's
please.
going to send them out? Are you going to send them out, Michelle, because you're the secretary, or?
Sure.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I just like to know who's going to do what. Like
Yes. Today, Wednesday. I'll get them out by tomorrow, hopefully tomorrow afternoon. And I'll list it. So I'll list everyone's name, their title, and no signatures needed. Okay. All right. I'm on it. I'll send this stuff to you guys tonight just to peruse and make, if you need to edit, you can edit. I'm not offended by anything. All right.
Thank you, Michelle.
Okay. So now what are we going to do about talking points?
Wait, you didn't talk about that yet.
You Zoom bombed our meeting, Julie.
So we've decided that we definitely need to communicate that our budget is being reduced because state revenues have been reduced. That cannot be made up through property taxes. And that in order to, something the classrooms Michelle was talking about earlier, provide the services or the essential something or other. Educational experience, right?
So,
Yes, Peter had said educational experience. It was just
the absolute
taking.
bare bones to continue the expected excellence of the Hamilton district.
Okay, so that's what we said. So that needs like a logo, or it needs something that we can post on our social media.
What does it need to say? Sorry, I was reading something as you were saying it.
So can I ask, are we trying to find talking points to respond to any questions that people may have submitted to in the survey, or are we trying to do a talking points about how to advocate for the budget if they go to a town meeting, or both?
Yeah, I think both.
Okay. So I think it may be worth sort of, I don't know if people have done it. I read the survey. I didn't spend a lot of time, unfortunately, sort of analyzing, sort of like bundling the questions into thematic elements. I don't know if anybody did that.
I did.
Julie did.
Are there key items, like 5-6 things that stand out?
Well,
go ahead.
Julie, are you talking about the yellow ones?
No, beyond that.
Oh.
I mean, that was my initial analysis, but I think you're going to need let me reframe that. What I would recommend is a variety of memes that are talking points. I mean, obviously, you didn't have to read any of the feedback to hear the passion that was displayed in our last meeting. So, arts, languages, that's passion. Those are passion points for our students and our families. And so how do we encourage them to stay involved in order to make sure those things are retained? Because we all discussed this before. None of us wanted to even put that out to the public because we knew that it would be traumatic for even kids to think about those things. Yet, if we're talking about what's essential, if we get down to the bare bones and like what are graduation requirements, what are core content requirements, that's not school. That's not what we want to create. So somehow we need to, through memes and quick little posts and visuals, put that out there to families. That's going to resonate. Maybe it's little videos. Maybe we get some of the teachers to create a 30-second video that we can push out on social media that will encourage people to get out and vote. Because that's the ultimate goal, right? We just need people to get out and vote. We don't need to tell them how to vote. We don't need to tell them what matters. We just need to put a variety of things out there that are going to strike everyone's passion points and get people out to vote.
We need one that's in Spanish. And it says, if you can read this, thank a Spanish teacher. Get
We
out.
can do that. We can certainly do that. That's easy.
Right? Like that's one. It would make my heart sing if you got out and vote.
Oh, that's good. Make my heart sing. And you know, our teachers will take these and like run with them, and they'll be amazing and mind blowing.
You even need something that's just like, I need a teacher.
I would run a mile for my athletic, whatever,
Yeah.
whatever, something. I can't think.
That's good.
I would run a mile for our district.
Yeah, that's a good one.
For sport, say, come at me, bro.
Say that again, Peter.
For sports, you could say, come at me, bro.
I can't hear it.
For sports, you could say, come at me, bro.
Little aggressive.
Come at me, bro.
Well, you could say something, be a part of the team, be a part of the team.
Mm-hmm.
Vote for the budget.
Go
to town. Be a part of the team. Go to town meeting.
Go Generals.
Or
go Generals. Go to your meeting. Go to the meeting. Go Generals. Whatever.
Meet you on the field.
Generals go to meetings. Hashtag.
Right.
Hashtag meet you on the field.
Generals vote. Hashtag Generals vote.
Yep.
All the kids are watching this right now, and they're like, "You're missing it." Where's Thomas?
They're rolling their eyes saying, "Just stop, you old folks. Stop."
We need Thomas.
Right.
All right, but okay, we're on a roll. Keep it going. What are some other mantras?
I do think meet you on the field is one, because that's where it's happening.
We need something for theater, something along the lines of acting or the drama.
Like your performance matters.
Yeah. Your performance matters. Yep.
All right, we'll get Katie Simcoe can help us with that.
Something about read up and be a voter or something like that. Like,
do your civic duty.
Whoa, that's a separate one, Peter.
That's a one, but and something like
civic responsibility.
Counting is important. Be counted.
Math. Counting.
Right? Counting is important. Be counted.
Okay.
I should work for the
I feel like I missed one though before Peter's do your civic duty.
Something about read up.
Okay, read up.
Read up and vote or something like that. Or
if you can read this, go vote.
Yeah. Right.
Okay. All right, who's creating all these? Am I doing all these things? Because I'm not sure I have like the human capacity to do all of it.
So basically, we need to go to a meme generator, you think, and put these on?
I know a guy, David Polito, who's a graphic designer. Is he on here?
I'm here.
There might be another resident in town we could ask to help you that you might know, David.
We could quote Friedrich Nietzsche and say, without music, life would be a mistake.
That's too heady, my friend.
I was gonna say, if you can read this, thank your teacher.
Yeah.
Yeah, basic. Okay, so what's the execution plan? I love all these ideas. I have like at least 10 things on my notepad. Who, what, where, when?
So I'm happy to post them on Facebook. I'm happy to tweet. However,
All right, so Michelle Bailey is the social media queen.
I would say I don't follow all the teachers and I don't have all of them following me, but
Not
like
yet.
I have the big one, like Deb Clapp and oh gosh, why can't I think of her name? It begins with an L.
It'll snowball though.
Wilson?
Yeah. If you start tagging the district, and our Facebook page is slowly gaining momentum. I have to admit, I haven't had enough time to like really attend to promoting it, but I think future it's going to be a good resource. So as long as you're tagging the district and tagging, then principals will forward it. I think that's a good strategy. So Michelle Bailey's the social media queen. David, are you the digital arts?
Yeah, happy to help.
Right.
I think we need a letter to the editor or a sitting in article on why people should vote for our budget.
All right. So who's that person?
So we need to craft that between probably now and next week because we probably have to approve it next week.
Is that a Jean Lee thing?
That is definitely a Jean Lee thing.
All right. Sounds like a Jean Lee thing.
I want to be very clear to you. What is it? When is it? And what do I have to do? No philosophy.
Yeah, that's why it probably isn't me. Well, okay, I'll give it a whirl.
I mean, all right. If Jean's a little more, I don't know what the right word is. Is there someone else?
He can get it. He can get it done.
All right. Jean can do it. Okay. Stacy Metternich. Stacy, talk to me about your strengths. You're a marketer, you're a promoter. How can you help us?
Stacy,
I don't know. I'm still having a hard time with this budget. So I'm really having a hard time when knowing how our towns are struggling with people unemployed and with a high percentage. I really am. Speaking in my household, how that's affected ours, the COVID-19 and people who in my family who personally have COVID-19, I'm having a hard time with all this. So
do you want to, can you do like a letter
and knowing
to the editor?
how the taxes increase too, that's killing me too.
So can you write a real article from your perspective that's like, hey, here's my life. Like here's how I'm experiencing it. And here's how this is hard. And like balance, like I get the school needs because I'm a school committee member and I've had the inside track, but at the same time, I'm experiencing this reality. I think that's really refreshing. Like people need to hear that. And is that like a letter to the editor that people need to hear? Because nobody wants you all to be a rubber stamp. Nobody wants you all to be like, yes, we need the budget we presented in February. Like that's not going to go over well. People need to hear that you have opposing views and that you're experiencing life in different ways. I think that's honest and transparent and refreshing, but it also requires you to be really vulnerable, Stacy. And I don't know if you want to do that or not.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Okay. That's okay. That's okay. Is there anyone else who's thinking of an idea of how they could maybe put things out there?
I'm just trying to think. I mean, I've already spoken with the Ed Fund, and they're having a meeting in 2 weeks. But I'm thinking the sports, the boosters, but we can't use. Oh, actually, no. I can do my personal email and reach out to the boosters through their personal at the high school.
I'm waiting to hear back from a friends group.
Oh, the friends group too. Right.
Michelle, do you know what the tax implications are if this all passes? to the Wyndham residents, because I tried to reach out to Alex, and he said that you got an email with those tax implication costs.
Yeah, Anthony sent that thing from when we had the meeting together. I can find it.
So I'll do it from memory, and it won't be 100% accurate while Michelle's looking for it, but I think they were basing it on like average home value of 545 or 575. This is where my photographic memory doesn't serve me well. But I think if your average home value, if we went for full town override, full school override as projected, it would have been like $1,001 and some change if your average home value was 545. And then of course it went up and down, dependent upon, did you find it, Michelle?
Yeah, it's like, well, they've got okay, so both town and schools override together. Let's see, it looks like the schools, it appears to be $777, which is 777. That's pretty darn lucky.
That's lucky. But
Yeah.
do the two together. Do the two together, because this is what we really need.
Yeah, the two together is so it's $1,013, not lucky, for the overrides, the operational overrides, and then if you get the overrides, the debt exclusion, you get your leaves picked up, it's $1,054 for
13 is a lucky number in France.
Yeah, that's right. And Japan too, actually.
And you'd know that if you world languages.
Parlez-vous français?
The median home value is $575,700.
75.
So like roughly 575,000. So if your home value is less than that, it'd be a less impact. If your home value is more than that, it would be more of an impact.
And since this is a kind of all over meeting, I'll just add that if you're a parent of a child, forget if you have 2 children or 3 children, and you start to calculate user fees, very quickly, your user fees exceed what that tax increase allotment would be.
Right.
You're still paying user fees.
We're still paying
plus that increase. So that, still a lot.
But that's based on our February. That's based on our February budget, which did not increase user fees. It actually decreased them slightly. So if you approved our February budget with no reductions to revenue or anything else, the amount of monies you would be paying toward taxes and or combined user fees would be significantly less. If we have to reduce our district contribution to user fees and at the same time maintain the same tax ask, in essence, you'd be receiving a double tax increase.
Yeah, but we are going to be increasing user fees, correct? If we make that decision next week.
If you make that decision, right.
Well, if it goes with what was suggested for the 1.274, it was suggested to lower or increase the user fees from a 40-60 to a 70-30.
Yeah. And it's unfortunate place to be. However, when you read a lot of the comments, people they want to have athletics. They are willing to pay fees. They wanted to know how they could fundraise. They wanted to know how, they could make sure to maintain the quality of the schools. So I think people are okay with those fees.
Well, that was only a couple. There wasn't a lot of people who said that. There was a couple of people who said that. There was a lot of talk about cutting administration. A lot of wanted to cut administration.
That was definitely in there as well. And I think, you know, when we go through and we look at the cuts, we should be sure and highlight, like, these people are administrators, these people are administrative, these people are teachers, these people, you know, do whatever. Because, you know, most of our expenses are people. And so when we reduce our expenses, that's what we are looking at. How do we efficiently disperse our human resources to meet the needs, you know, to operate the schools to the betterment of the community.
And also people were asking, you know, if we don't have school in fall, what kind of money are we saving? And can we furlough people? And now I'm seeing a lot on MASC listserv talking about furloughing employees. So.
Right. That's why it would be nice for the DESE to give us some guidance later.
And a lot of what you're seeing on MASC is about furloughing people from now until June 19th.
Right.
And so we don't really have any guidance or understanding of what school will look like moving beyond that. To that end, I'll just share, I think it's okay to share this, that we had a call with the commissioner today, and he said that guidance, although they'll be initialing or sharing some guidance, some initial guidance on PPE, so the protective air equipment, maybe as soon as Monday. We won't really have any guidance about school moving forward until the middle of June. So we're all kind of in the dark guessing what's going to be what and what are we going to need. But with that being said, there are some known knowns that are going to happen, which is the resources that kids are going to need when they come back in the fall. And I encourage us to continue to think about that as we make these decisions.
Okay, so Peter's contacted a friends group. Jean, do you want to get in touch? Are you still the Cutler person, or is it someone else?
It's still me.
Do you want to just see what's up with them?
Yep.
I think I'm the liaison to the, no, Ty, are you the liaison to the CPAC, or is it me? You can tell us if you. Yeah, okay. So I will get in touch with them and just, you know, if people have questions, and also just, we're happy to provide answers. Can we, wondering if there's other ways to get.
I have.
Oh, I know. Could you send a, go ahead, Michelle.
No, I was just going to say, we do have our spreadsheet when we were going to do the road show in March and April to the various crews. So there is it's in our documents. So I can reach out to the Hamilton Wyndham Mothers Club. We all have our liaisons, right, for our schools. Who is Winthrop School? Did Ty, I know it was Carrie before she left. Did we assign it to Ty? If not, I can reach out to them.
I might be for the Bucher. Am I?
I don't know who.
I think Peter's Bucher.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm the liaison with the Friends of Bucher. I was all wellness, but I think
I might have said I would do that. Can you contact them, Michelle, just because I think you're nearby there?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, I have no problem. So, and I know some of the people that are still on there, the Friends of Winthrop. Okay. So Boosters, Friends of Winthrop, and Hamilton Wyndham Mothers Club. We also have I don't think they're communicating at all, but the Council on Aging. Wyndham is probably more receptive to things. So Jen Flynn is the contact person there.
Yeah, I wonder if they're being successful in getting like Zoom meetings and stuff going.
You know what?
We could
I'll
hold
reach
a
out to
forum
Jen
if they
Flynn.
wanted. We could hold a forum if they wanted. I think we should be in touch with Friends of the Arts. Does anybody know them pretty well, or?
I don't know anybody anymore. Let me reach out to Kristen Kelly.
Okay. If that doesn't, I mean, I think Nikki Roebuck knows who's in charge, but I don't.
Didn't we got an email from someone who's in charge of the Friends of Arts, and I actually replied to that email, and she said she was going to support the budget
Mm-hmm.
and get word out.
I might have missed it. Thank you. Peter raised his hand.
He's had that up there for a while.
Oh, sorry, I never lowered it from back when I was talking about what Dr. Kuchenberger was talking about.
Yeah, because especially if we have, whatever, some sort of graphic that says, make my heart sing and vote for the budget, Friends of the Arts can put that out on their Facebook page.
So my neighbor is the president of Friends of the Arts.
Oh,
there you go. It's yours
there
now.
you go. You're it, Ty. You're going to have to talk to them. And who is it? Do you know?
Yeah, I think it's Lexi Reardon.
Oh,
it is. We did receive an email from her. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, I thought we got something because I replied to her email and she replied back to me.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that'd be great. If you could just let them know, we're interested in having them help us communicate.
Are you all capable? I don't mean this in a disrespectful way, but are you all capable of creating the memes you need to create and the communications you need to create, or do you need David's help with that as a graphic designer? What's the plan?
So you're going to provide David the list and share it with all of us, and David's going to create them. And all the ones that we don't like, we're going to make our own.
Is it too cheesy for such an important matter to make bumper sticker slogans out of it? I don't know.
It's not.
We live in a 30-second span, attention span society right now, right? So
Attention span of goldfish.
And it's also that when you're talking about children's issues, a lot of times you try and bring it down to the children's level, because it communicates a message that this is about children. And that's why the message is a little bit childlike.
All right, so David's on that. He's got all the notes I can see.
I will advise you, though, don't print anything out and put it in people's mailboxes, because it's illegal to do that. So if you want to give it to people in their mailbox, you need to put a stamp on it.
Or could it come to our personal emails?
Or email it. Don't put it in their mailbox, because that's illegal.
Who actually checks their mailbox?
I'll talk to you about it later.
Just wondering.
Somebody checks other people's mailboxes.
Who put stuff in other people's mailboxes? Who knows? But we know what color their car is.
Okay, so I sent to everybody the 2 letters to the Board of Selectmen, so just take a look at it and please get it back to me ASAP with any changes. All right, then I'll get that out. And can I email the letters to them? I can. Okay.
Oh, yes.
All right.
Be sure and include their, their town manager, town administrator, because they keep records and stuff.
And the assistant superintendent and superintendent.
So
Aye, Captain.
Are there other things on the agenda tonight?
Just negotiate some committee and then approving warrants.
All right. So the negotiation subcommittee met today with the Hamilton Wyndham Educators Association, and we're moving forward, partnering with them as well as the other unions to help with the budget deficit, and things are going really well. And again, it's a good partnership. So everyone's working towards the goal of keeping our classroom intact and keeping our students well educated. And we have a meeting next Wednesday.
Great. And then we just have consent agenda, a few warrants and meetings. Anyone want to pull anything? All right. Can I get a motion?
Yep, I make a motion that the Hamilton Wyndham School Committee accepts the consent agenda as listed in the agenda as is, and no changes can be made.
Second.
Second by Jean Lee. Stacy Metternich,
Abstain.
Ty Prima,
Yes.
Jean Lee,
Yes.
Peter Walczyk,
Yes.
Michelle Horgan,
Yes.
Michelle Bailey,
Yes.
David Polito's a yes. Any topics for future meeting? We get a meeting next Wednesday.
Yep. I talked to Michelle about this in the beginning of the meeting, or before we went live. A person contacted me last week that they couldn't see the meeting on TV. And I thought, I know it's live streamed, but she was just concerned. She was able to go on via Zoom today. But do we know, is it on TV?
It's supposed to be.
Yes, it has been live streamed. It's if you go on live streaming YouTube, it hasn't been. So on TV, yes. On YouTube Live, it has not been.
Okay, so she wasn't
All the
able to
time.
get it last week on the TV. So I asked her, said that I'd ask her. So maybe could we reach out to Hamilton Wyndham TV?
He's
Cam, and
on.
see what's going on. He's on
Well, he's
now?
on, but he's not listening. He's just using it to.
Recording.
Well,
Yeah.
I would recommend asking Bill Melville
Melville.
to do like a how-to, you know. I think he probably already has this. I feel like I've seen it. But maybe something we could send out to residents that are having trouble accessing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I did a tutorial 6 feet apart today on someone's porch. It was fun. Very adept.
I'll
maybe
email
something.
him and ask him, if he has it, and if not, if he would create it. And then we would put it on our page, Julie. Is that what we would do? Or show it at a meeting, or what would we do with it?
Sorry, I was just taking a bite of food. I think we
Okay.
would do all those things.
Okay.
And if there's a specific resident who reaches out, we could send it to them, but we could also post it on our webpage and make it available.
Julie, can you send a message out to parents that basically says they should know that they can get an absentee ballot and that Hamilton is having a town meeting? Is that something that's doable?
I would absolutely do that if I knew all the specifics. I've been trying to get all the information, but I don't yet have it.
I can send you a pretty awesome email.
Okay.
Okay.
Is that just Wyndham, Michelle?
I probably might have one for Hamilton.
I have a question. Do we know when the high school graduation is going to be? Because I read something in Salem Evening News that it's going to be July 25th. So I haven't heard from our principal telling us about any graduation, what's going on, because I still get texts from people about graduation, but was interested to find out that on the Salem Evening News said our graduation is July 25th.
So the Salem News did ask for a press release from us. I asked the high school principal to provide that. And so next week when we do our whole district remote learning update, we'll certainly add those. There's a variety of things happening in the next couple of days for seniors, and not only seniors, but like students transitioning to 6th grade and things like that we'll include in that presentation.
I would encourage you to maybe let them know if they send out a press release, they should CC the school committee on it in the future.
Yeah, we used to get information, so I was shocked to see it on the newspaper first and not even hear from our high school principal what's going on with high school graduation information, because I've had a lot of people text me asking, do I know what's going on with graduation? Any kind of graduation events going on? And I said, I didn't know. And then I saw it in the newspaper. So it's a little disconcerting.
So I'm going to own that 150%. That was my fault. I asked the principal to respond to the reporter, and I should have CC'd all of you on his response. But I will certainly forward that to you immediately.
So we've gotten a couple of emails. One came during this meeting of some community members really making some pretty substantial sort of volunteers or volunteering themselves or funding that I'm curious if we want to speak about at some point. I also don't want to throw it.
Next week.
Okay.
Next week. Let's talk about it next week.
That's what I'm saying.
Yes.
Okay.
And
I can like
there's
shoot.
an email from the DESE that we can have Vinny share.
Okay.
I guess I have it. I'm happy to share it with all of you.
Oh.
That way it's not back on Vinny. It's from Vinny, but I'll share it with all of you.
All right. All right. We good?
Okay. Yep.
Can
I
I get a
make a
motion?
motion. Yep. I make a motion that we adjourn the meeting at 9:38 p.m.
A second? Can I get a second?
Second.
Thanks, Peter. Peter Walsick,
Yes.
Jean Lee,
Yes.
Ty Prima,
Yes.
Stacy Medrick,
Yes.
Michelle Bailey,
Yes.
Michelle Horgan,
Yes.
and David Polito's a yes. Thanks, guys. I actually thought this was going to be